Good morning and welcome to the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing and public meeting of Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. We'll begin this morning by taking attendance, and I'll ask our General Counsel, Mark Silverman, to call the roll.
Chair Carroll.
Here.
Vice Chair Bland.
Here.
Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Chu. Commissioner Ginsburg.
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum. Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Lutfi.
Here.
Commissioner Master.
Here.
All right. Good morning again, and welcome to our public hearing and public meeting today, Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. This meeting is being held in our hearing room at 1 Center Street on the 9th floor. It is also being held via Zoom for anyone who would like to participate remotely. And it will be live streamed on our YouTube channel for anyone who would like to watch the proceedings. We are going to begin this morning with a public meeting item, which is an application for work on a designated property that has already had a public hearing and for which we've already taken testimony, and the applicants are back today with a revised proposal. And then we will move to our public hearing agenda to review new applications for work on designated properties. And with that, I will turn it over to Corey Harala, our Director of Preservation.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. We'll start today's Preservation Department agenda with public meeting item number 1, LPC 24-05576, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 720, Lot 40, 413, 415 West 22nd Street in the Chelsea Historic District Extension. This is 2 Anglo-Italianate style row houses built in 1856, and the application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions, install a cornice and balcony, replace entry, infill, and fencing, and remove portions of floors in the party wall. This was last presented at the public meeting of August 6, 2024. No action was taken at that time. The applicant will present revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
All right, so we'll do that right now. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
And Commissioner Master, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the applicant may speak. Applicant on Zoom.
Hello.
All right, please state your name before you begin.
Hi, my name is Tom Klaber. I'm an architect at KDA. Thank you, Corey. Thank you to the commission. Apologies for not being there in person today. We are excited to be representing 415 West 22nd Street. Per the commission's instructions, we'll be concentrating this presentation on modifications to the rear of the building, as all the restorative work on the front and the roof addition was supported by this commission our last time through, but would like to take a moment to quickly recap and reorient and refresh anybody's memories about the project. So we are located in the Chelsea Historic District Extension on the north side of 22nd Street, between 9th and 10th Avenue, closer to the 9th Avenue side, on a block that is composed of many similar sized buildings. There's a notable bookend building to our east, and then the north side of the donut is out of the district on the south side of 23rd Street. By the 1980s, most of the historic detailing of these two buildings had been lost, but if we fast forward to today, we can see that some of that restorative work had already begun, and that's work that we are looking to continue, and that was supported by this commission. The rear has been heavily modified with a lower garden level addition, along with a 2-story extension above that and various other air conditioning openings, windows, enlargements, and shrinkages that you would expect of a building of this age. So again, to recap the changes that were already made to this proposal, the front facade restoration work, including the changes to the front areaway and restorative work on the front facade, was all supported by this commission, as well as our interpretation of the roof addition was supported by this commission after we had lowered it by 18 inches. The other major change that we had made was the preservation of the internal brick party wall for the first 15 feet of the project on the first 4 floors. The major change that we had made between our first presentation and our last one, in the rear, that will carry over to today's presentation, is the removal of the 3rd floor extension to bring the entire building above the parlor floor back to its existing building line, and the removal of the floor to ceiling windows on the third floor, and the change of that material back to brick, along with the windows being kept at their original size. So to take a look again at the existing condition of the rear facade and its relationship to the neighbors, the most notable features to our east is that 20-foot extension at our neighbor at 411, and the balconies at 417, and the fact that 417 extends out past us, and then 419 and 421 extend out further. A bulk of the work that we've been doing this past month is working with the engineers, the structural and shoring engineers, and the contractors to determine the viability of the preservation of the top 2 stories of brick. And we've determined that the facade is in fair condition and is viable to save the top 2 stories. The condition of the brick behind the chimney is an open question, and there will be some required repointing in sections based on the condition of the mortar on the interior. But overall, again, it's in fair condition, and the now current plan is to preserve the top 2 stories of brick, and then use salvaged brick from below to fill in the various air conditioning openings and any other places that need patches and repairs. So again, to look at our building in context and Heartline, we can see that our relationship to the east with the neighbor with that full extension, we don't share much relationship. And then there's the eccentric fenestration strategy to our friends at 417. So there's not any relationship, and our building already stands a little bit as a single unit sandwiched between these two unlike buildings on either side. So here is the revised proposal, and we will look at the specifics more closely now. So the headline, again, is that we are now looking to preserve the top 2 stories of brick in place and keep the windows in their existing openings, save for some sill adjustments on the 4th floor, which we'll look at the next slide. The other major changes that we have made were to lighten the composition based on the comments of this commission. So we have removed some of the decorative metalwork in the facade. We have lowered the top of the brick by 6 inches to lighten the top area. And we have also reorganized the 4 bays to create a 2x2 configuration rather than having 4 equal bays to pay better homage to the 2 previous buildings property line. So now we can cut this the extension away, and we can see again that we're just proposing a balcony on the 2nd floor and a balcony on the 4th floor, and that these 2 top stories are being preserved in place, with the 3rd floor windows being kept in their existing openings. And on the 4th floor, we are proposing to lower the 2 center bays down to create doors out onto that deck. And we are proposing to slightly raise the header heights of those windows to maintain a similar relationship to the cornice, which, if you remember, is being raised slightly as a consequence to the flattening of the roof. So if we compare this to the previously presented, again, the major change is the preservation of the top 2 stories in place. We've also scaled back the detailing around those windows to better match the existing lintel and sill details. We have again lowered that top story by 6 inches, and we have removed the decorative metalwork in between, and then reorganized the rhythm of those bays to create the 2x2, all in an effort to lighten up this rear facade. The materiality has stayed the same, except obviously rather than reclaimed brick for the top 2 stories as we were previously presenting, we are now, obviously that's going to be kept in place and repaired and patched as required. We are proposing here to have the stucco for the rooftop addition, and then red brick with the bronze steel metalwork in between. Here, a a conceptual rendering showing the existing versus the proposed. And here we can see the previously presented and the currently proposed. And you can see the simplification of the brick detailing around the outside to help, again, lighten up the overall composition. So I was told to keep it short and sweet, but be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. It was very well presented. All right. Any questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
I have a question because it seems to me that the structure from the second to the fourth floor is all a screen, and it does support the balcony up at the, I think, call it the fourth floor. But besides aesthetic preference, is there any reason that all of that masonry frontage is there?
Besides the composition of the building. No, we wanted the aspect of the new addition to read as a single element rather than a floating balcony on that fourth floor, and wanted to connect the first two floor extensions to that. Yeah, so it is a architectural decision.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? All right, so I think we can move to our discussion if there are no other questions. So as has been presented, this is the third time this application is before us. The first time we all had a consensus to support the work at the front facade and the rooftop, and then the second time supported the rooftop addition, which had been lowered. So the remaining portion of the application before us today is at the rear facade. And the applicant has always had this sort of design scheme with the arcade at the back. And in the past, we've had comments about keeping more of the existing fabric, for specifically at the top two floors. And the last time they presented it, they were proposing to rebuild it in the same plane with reclaimed brick. Today, they are now proposing to keep it in place and to just modify the windows at heights at the top floor slightly to address the height of the cornice and to create access onto the arcade, I believe. And then where there are air conditioner units, they'll use reclaimed brick, salvaged brick from the floors below. And then finally, with respect to the arcade, we've had a lot of discussion about it. I think there's been some discussion about how it faces buildings outside of the district. It's not visible from a public way, and we have been flexible, but then there have also been concerns about the language of it and does it relate to the character, scale and character of a row house. And I think some suggestions were made last time that the applicant has taken, which included lightening it up, reorganizing the bays so that it has a wider center pier to reflect the fact that these are two buildings, and simplified the brick detail and the ironwork detail around it. So, and also reduce the height of the brick at the top of it to have it read more as a screen. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this one?
Not really. I mean, I think the rooftop is fine. I think the front facade work is fine. I think that the problem I have with the rear is that despite the minor variation in pier width that was created, the strength of this arcade as a gesture kind of makes the variation in the width of the piers look like a mistake, or like it's really not. I mean, the whole point of the comment that I made at the time was that the quality of the building as having been two structures that are joined is lost in the arcade, and despite the variations, I don't really see that. The fact that we really don't, we give a lot of leeway to stuff in the backyard. Should be a mitigating factor. I don't know. I just find this so kind of such a strong unifier that it really, and such a positive kind of front of building element. It's just hard for me to kind of see how this fits in with the normal language of rear yard construction that we see, even when it's new and relatively grandiose. I mean, I guess if the majority supports it, I wouldn't vote against it, but it just feels weird to me.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I actually think that the applicant did a very good job in addressing our concerns. This is the third time that they've come back. You know, and they have said that they're gonna retain the upper two floors, and all the material. They've also adjusted the window heights and its relationship. And, you know, even though they wanted to retain you know, their design element in the rear, they did try to pay homage that it is two separate buildings by strengthening the central pier. And because of their responsiveness to our comments from before, I can find this appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi.
It is true that the applicant did make some very important changes in terms of maintaining the existing fabric, lightening it up. You know, I have to say that I agree with Michael that the language is so. I think we're very open when it comes to backyards, and I understand that this is not visible. But when I look at the rhythm of the rear facades it's on another slide, I just feel like it literally still sticks out like a sore thumb. And I really just don't feel comfortable with it.
So the two buildings were 2 bays each, and so the 4 bays reflect that fenestration pattern. So is it the fact that it's a 4-story arcade that's open that is
It's the
dominating?
if you
or-
turn to page 13, I mean, to me, well, that's a fine page too. That look,
Well, or go to
if
the
you look
one-
at even what it looked like before, which was a little problematic within context. Can we go back to
maybe
even before they showed us? I mean, it blended in better than what they have now. And I just don't feel comfortable
so
with
that's
it.
okay. I'm just trying to understand if it's the sort of the rhythm or if it's actually the height of the arcade.
I think it's,
Maybe Michael, that would be a question.
And
for you.
I would say that this is a case where classical architecture and all of the baggage that it carries is brought to the rear, to a kind of non-classical domain, and it gives the building, at least this is my take on it, and I share, you know, the view. I think the view of the courtyard is good because it's such a visually laden image, you know, and it's a laden image of classical architecture that is frontal. And even all the modern ones that we see, they function in a funny way in the rear because they're clearly of a different era and of a kind of more informal quality because of the amount of fenestration. There's something about that you know, very forceful, very well-known classical kind of arcade language that makes it both out of its time and out of its place. I don't know how to say it more articulately.
I mean, I actually think that thank you. But also, you know, when we review more modern rear facades, there's an effort, you know, people are generally trying to access more light, so they're putting on more glazing. And somehow I feel like it just meshes better with the cleaner lines of these rear facades than this arcade with the arches and the detail. And it just, I don't know, it just doesn't work for me.
Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, this is, obviously, I was having a lot of difficulties with a particular approach. And it is very unusual. I mean, we do approve a lot of different rear facades. This is not part of a row. It's near a very large building. And but I, sort of share some of the other commissioners' feelings, I guess, because it does make a very kind of dramatic statement, but, an unusual one that, unlike, let's say, a glass facade or something, which we're kind of used to. And maybe by just, they've pretty much moved away from the arch approach, and maybe doing that even further would have, and make some other minor changes, could make it appear more, what I want to say, closer to the other facades on the back here. I don't have any problem with the rooftop, and I guess no one else does either. I think that the changes they did make in terms of widening the piers and including more detail have improved the sense that there are two buildings here. And that and moved it in the right direction, but I guess I'd like to hear some more comments, but I think that it's still presenting very atypically.
Okay. Commissioner Bland?
It's exactly that atypical that I like. I think it's a very interesting solution. And I'll just note, it's already been said, nobody can see this from the public way at all. The only people that can see it at all are people who live outside the district on the other side of the donut. So I think maybe I'm looser than others regarding backyards, but I think to me, this is just a refreshing and different approach. To unite two tiny, very narrow buildings into one building, to me, in this case, doesn't seem to be the end of the world. A 4-bay building is not so very unusual in a brownstone district. And the arch, it's this architect's or this owner's approach to what they want to do. I think it's very well done. I think the improvements that have been made, subtle as they are, make it work. Can we actually not have that slide up? I'm talking about
Proposed.
Yeah, let's put the proposed up. Right. Yeah. The Center Bay, I mean, that's for about 11 of us to know about, and probably the rest of the world will never understand that additional few inches. But to me, it doesn't even matter, because the expression of a slightly wider building there doesn't offend me at all. So all in all, I think the changes have been made are good ones, and I can support this as appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Interesting discussion. I guess, I share some initial, feeling about, it is kind of atypical, and it's a very strong statement. But I can see that, in the context of what Vice Chair Blunt just said, which is that it's not really visible. That you're taking two buildings and then reflecting it. I guess what Michael and the other comments was, I guess, the classical language of the semicircular top, right? And then the fact that it projects out. I'm sort of on the fence on this one, but I would defer to the majority, see what everyone feels.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I have a similar thing, and I'm not sure where the majority is, but I agree with the many of the comments. I first want to separate program from design because I think the balconies are fine. And as to design the balcony, the fourth floor balcony could be cantilevered, or it could be done with much less. But the point that you can't see it except from buildings out of the district, and it's not visible from the street. So I could go somewhat either way, and agree with Commissioner Goldblum that I'd probably go with the majority, wouldn't vote against it, but I'm not totally happy with it.
Okay. So, and in my view, looking at this, I feel as though the architect has had this sort of design idea. And I think that we do allow for individual design approaches and ideas on non-visible rear facades. And I think that in this case, what is a little bit unusual is that it's an open arcade at the top two floors. And the arches aren't found elsewhere in the block, but I do think it's a varied block. I think that, it's got the large building next to it. It has some altered openings in some of the other houses. I think they're also very, very small houses. Most of the houses that we look at are actually usually 3 bays. And so we sometimes see 2 bays and we sometimes see 4 bays. So I think the 4 bay is, if it were combining 2 3-bay wide houses to a 6-bay wide arcade, I think that would be something that would look very dominating. But given the scale of these, I think it's not. And I, just thinking about appropriateness and the fact that it's not visible, and there's historic fabric being maintained at the top 2 floors and in the interior with portion of the party wall, that the lightening up of the masonry, the use of masonry, and the subtle gestures in pier widths all fall within the kind of realm of appropriateness. And I think even when we do approve very glassy additions, I think that in some ways they also don't relate to the rhythm. So this has arches. So I'm not sure that, I kind of understand the straight lines, meaning having some sort of relationship, but I also think that this has a vertical relationship, and I'm not sure that the arches diminish that relationship so much for me. So I think given our practice on rear facades and the steps that the applicant has taken to make this fit within the context, I could support it. But I think where that leaves it is there are 3 of us who could support it as is, 2 that are really uncomfortable with it, and 3 who are on the fence. So I think, sort of Diana and Wellington and Mark, I think it was sort of up to you to choose a side of the fence. Or
because you make them.
I can support this.
Commissioner Chen.
And your point about, the 4 bay is sort of, you look at the pattern, it is contextual, and it just, it is, and the fact that it's lack of visibility, and also that they kept the top, they try to, pay, as Commissioner Master said, pay homage to what's there.
I think, and I hope also that the thinning up of the piers will really make it look more like a screen, and you'll understand that there's the historic facade behind it. Commissioner
I
Chapin?
was going to say, one thing that I think's going on here, interestingly enough, is that they didn't do an elevation with no color. And in some ways, I think the renderings on this are really having a big impact on our assessment of the way it looks. And kind of like to see just a comparative elevation that hasn't, because I think it's harder for us to imagine somewhat, and it might be making it seem, you know, just impacting more than usually one's perception of it. Some of the other, you know,
Are you thinking
renderings
if it was a
in
different-
particular look, you know, like very floating. Let's put it that way.
Well, do you think if the brick matched or was lighter than, or, I mean, it appears a little bit darker here, but maybe the brick color was.
Yeah, maybe even if it were I know that I think originally someone suggested trying to make it more obvious that it was an addition by doing a change, but you know, but I think, yeah, maybe the same color. But for me anyway, but
So how
anyway, that's just my thoughts that, you know, I think we're seeing it in a different way than it might actually appear because of the.
Why don't you put there's a three-dimensional
Yeah. The rendering.
rendering in the back. Put that one up. Whoever's got the screen.
Edith, could you move to a different rendering?
There it is, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think.
So I think
Yeah.
it's, yeah, if you're not comfortable, we can't vote today. So I think that's the question.
Right, that was the thought.
Okay. So do you think you can't vote today?
I could vote, yeah, I could vote. I mean, I could vote today, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sorry.
So then I think we can do a motion to approve. So Vice Chair Bland, would you make the motion?
I will. In the matter of 413 to 415 West 72nd Street in the Chelsea Historic District Extension, this is an application to construct rooftop and rear yard additions, install a cornice and balcony, replace entry, infill, and fencing, and remove portions of floors and the party wall. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Chelsea Historic District. I recommend approval, noting that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the installation of front balconies and fencing and the replacement of the modern cornice and entrance infill with elements largely replicating the historic features will help return the buildings closer to their historic appearance. That the extension of the balcony across both buildings instead of one will be compatible with the style and design of the building and reflect their historic connection as a pair without distracting or detracting from the significant historic features of the facade. That the cornice will feature a notch. The front balcony and area fence will feature a center post, and the new window assembly at 415 West 22nd Street will recall the appearance of the historic entrance infill, thereby referencing the building's historic identities as separate houses. That the absence of a railing dividing the areaway between the two houses will subtly reflect their adaptive reuse as a single residence. That the rooftop addition will only be seen from limited views at a distance in the context of taller buildings and varied rooftop accretions, and the rear yard addition will not be visible from public thoroughfares. That the rooftop addition will be set back from the front and rear facades, and the rear yard addition will not extend to the top floor, helping to maintain a sense of the building's original massing. That the rooftop addition featuring gray stucco cladding and metal finishes at the windows, railings, and bulkhead roof will be simply designed and similar in height to neighboring additions, helping it to blend in to the surrounding context. That the rear yard addition will feature an overall form, solid to void ratio, materiality, finishes, and level of ornamentation, which will be compatible with the character of the secondary facade of buildings within the block. That the limited framing and unenclosed sections of the upper portion of the rear yard addition will recall the proportions and character of balconies and decks within the block. That except for the lowering of a window opening at each building to create entrances and slight increase to the height of the top floor window openings, the upper two floors of the historic rear facades will be retained. That the buildings are not part of a row, and the rear facades feature a simple composition and details. Therefore, the slight increase in height of the rear facade and masonry openings on the top floor of the rear facade will not detract from the buildings or their surrounding context. That a substantial portion of the property wall between the buildings will be retained, helping to maintain the individuality of the buildings, and that the removal of flooring at the front of one of the buildings will be largely imperceptible through windows from a public thoroughfare.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote
Chair Carroll,
here?
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
I mean, I, sorry, excuse me.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
sorry, Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master.
Aye.
7 in favor and none opposed. The motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to our public hearing agenda.
Right, we'll start with public hearing item number 1, LPC 25-01949. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1258, Lot 40. 510 Fifth Avenue, the Manufacturers Trust Company Building, individual and interior landmark. This is an international style building and interior designed by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, built in 1953 to 54. The application is to install interior signage, LED screens, partitions, and fixtures.
Morning, Commissioners. Cast I refer to Beacon State Partners. Joined by our clients from Fast Retailing, the parent company of Uniqlo and GU, Hiro Izaki, who is Director of Global Store Development, and Project Architect, Architect Director Kevin Gore of Architects. My colleague Sarah Rickle is joining us remotely this morning. We are presenting this morning a project for a new retail location for the retailer GU. It's a Japanese brand, which will be occupying the first and second floors of 510 Fifth Avenue, historically the Manufacturers Trust Company building. The project that we're going to present to you really has been designed and developed with 3 key goals in mind, and they tap into, particularly the first 2, they tap into really what is sort of what are the character defining features we think of this important landmark. One is transparency, but also luminosity, and the way lighting has been done in this space since the 1950s when it opened. The third principle really that all of this has been designed with consideration toward is reversibility. And we think particularly for a retail user that is coming into this space, similar to the 2 previous retail users, developing a design that can be undone at the end without significant impacts to the appearance of the building, without impacts to historic fabric. So as you'll see in this presentation, The only impacts, the only connections are to non-historic elements. We recently installed features on the interior. So turning to the building, this individual landmark, it was designated, the exterior was designated in 1997. The first and second floors were designated as interiors in 2011. It's located on the southwest corner of 43rd Street and 5th Avenue. It's 100 feet of frontage on 5th Avenue and 125 feet on 43rd Street. The building, as I mentioned, it was completed in 1954, designed by the firm of Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, with Gordon Bunshoff leading the design. It's located today on what is a very intensive commercial stretch of 5th Avenue, north of 42nd Street, with ground floor retailers lining both sides of the street. The base of this building, since the bank left, it has been occupied by two different retailers. The first, hopefully I don't have to restart.
The rest of the mics were picking you up. It's just the main one.
Very good. Okay. A retailer, Joe Fresh, moved in 2012 and was there for just 4 years. And the North Face currently occupies the space, and they've just been there for 8 years. GU, as I mentioned, will be occupying both the first and second floors of the base. The first time that a retailer has occupied the entire base of the building. A view of the 5th Avenue elevation, that 100-foot long elevation, you can see on the ground floor, and I'll just point this out. You're probably aware of here, the bank vault, a key component of the design. Putting the bank vault for the first time directly on the street and making it a sort of prominent feature of the building's design. And then the ground floor space and the second floor space. As I mentioned, the southern half of the first floor has not been occupied by the same retailer as the other space. So North Face and Joe Fresh before occupied basically the northern half of the first floor and the second floor, and GU will be occupying the entire first and second floor, which will, for the first time in many years, sort of unite the treatment of those spaces. I'll also just note the proportions. It's interesting to see the scale of the ground floor relative to the second floor. Historically, the ground floor was used for retail banking, and the second floor for commercial banking. And there is a sort of a preeminence to, we think, to the second floor in particular, but there will be similar treatments and care taken on, obviously, on both floors. I'll also just point out, you can see the way the 5th Avenue elevation has been treated, fixturing along the perimeter of that second floor slab, which is held back about 8 feet from the perimeter of the building, and then signage at the corner. Looking at some of the details, the entries on 5th Avenue, there are currently 2 entries on 5th Avenue. Those were approved under commission review in 2011. There are 2 entries sort of set within the mullion framework of the exterior cladding and curtain wall system, decal signage on the door, similar to what we are proposing. And then on the 43rd Street side, the photo on the upper right, this was historically the entry to the building. So the orientation of the public spaces, the first and second floors, has been completely changed. So historically, this was the entry. There's that center granite panel with a night deposit vault drop, but the glass panels on either side were the entry doors, and there was an interior vestibule that led directly to a central escalator, which brought people up to the second floor. And that has now been repositioned under the 2011 approval, and we'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. This is a rendering now illustrating the overall scope of the work. And as I mentioned, GU will be taking the entire ground floor and second floor, so bringing some unity back to the base of the building that hasn't been there for quite some time. The focus, as I mentioned, has been about transparency. There's fixturing around the perimeter of the first and second floors, but because of the way these have been designed as an open framework, you'll see through them, you'll see over them and around them. And so transparency is a key piece of this. And then the sign at the corner, which is an LED video screen sign, which will be lit at the corner. We think in terms of its sort of cubic form is really compatible with the shape of the building. And as you'll see in terms of its overall area, actually quite modest given the overall scale of the first and second floors of the base of the building. There is no exterior work other than decal signage on the doors, and all the work is taking place really on the interior. I'll also just mention that the key to this proposal are enhancements to the artwork on the interior. So there are two significant Harry Bertoia sculptures, and a key piece of this project and its planning has been to bring better attention and enhancements to those, which we'll talk about as we go through the proposal. Some photographs from the 1950s at the time of the building's completion. The key plan on the lower right is a second floor plan that was published at the time of these photographs. So on the left, obviously, this is the 43rd Street elevation. As I mentioned, that ground floor entry had been located on 43rd Street with lit signage above the entry. And you clearly get a sense, particularly at night, of this luminous ceiling, this sort of plane of light across the first, second, and the upper floors where the offices were. But of course, also the transparency that existed, and the idea of sort of seeing in, which of course was a completely novel idea for a bank. And I think it's difficult for us to sort of get the newness of this. In 1954, Lever House, Seagram's building, these were sort of the forefront of the international style and modernism in New York City. And this bank branch was really so new, and really was a completely different approach to the bank branch. Not just having the vault on the street, but obviously the transparency directly in to see the workings of the place. The photo on the right, number 2, this is looking east across the second floor. The slab edge is pulled back from the curtain wall system. There were low planters around the edge, but you see the ceiling grid, and then these white marble clad columns across the second floor. Another view looking into the space at night. What's interesting as well about the development of the bank was that the bank president at the time, Horace Flanagan, who had worked in Detroit at the time in the 1930s, before he came to New York, saw in the 1930s many empty bank branches. And he had this sense that, and particularly at the downturn of the 1930s, that there were all these beautiful bank spaces, branches, headquarters that were vacant, and that they weren't able to be adapted in a way that allowed for new uses. And so he actually had the thought of developing really what was sort of referred to as like convertibility, this idea of actually developing a design that could be reused, could be used for a new use. In 1950, late 40s, because the development of planning of the bank began in the 40s, but because of the inability to procure materials because of the war, this wasn't realized for another 10 years. But in speaking with SOM, his idea was that this needed to be adaptable, and it has been adaptable. The bank left in 2010. It has now served as a retail use, and I think it's sort of fascinating to think that is sort of baked into the DNA of the building itself. It's quite unusual, and it's quite forward thinking of a bank president to sort of see what had come before and say, okay, this is time for something that is maybe more flexible and can accommodate different uses. Some interior photographs up on the second floor. As I mentioned, Harry Bertoia was commissioned to do 2 sculptures in the bank. And looking at the photograph on the top of the slide, this is a view west across the second floor. So this is the commercial banking portion of the floor, and this bronze and steel screen along the wall. And I'll just point out, so it was situated here. So you're looking in this direction. There were desks and counters on either side, but you could see through it to this back wall, which is a dark granite, and the light obviously passed through it. And the photos on the lower register on the left, again, you can see the desks on either side of it and the sort of transparency of the screen. It was really an architectural feature that divided different spaces within the second floor, but it had obviously a tremendous presence. And then the photo number 3, looking back toward the corner at 43rd and 5th, just to see the sort of activity and furniture that existed. It's hard to see, but there was the other sculpture is up on the suspended from the ceiling. It's a wire sculpture, Untitled, people refer to it as the Cloud, and it was set on axis at the top of the escalator. And what happened in 2010 or 2011, when the orientation and circulation of the interior was changed and the escalator was rotated 90 degrees, that sculpture stayed and today is in its historic location, but it's lost its connection to the escalator. So the idea historically was you came in off of 43rd, the escalator was directly in front of you, and as you went up the escalator, you saw that second sculpture directly above you. But now that sculpture remains in its historic location, but the escalator's been rotated. So part of what we'd like to do as part of this proposal is actually reposition that sculpture, which actually left the building and then came back, but reposition it so it is again at the top of the escalator. So you have that sort of axial relationship as was originally intended. So turning to a few photographs from the time of designation, this is a ground floor photograph just illustrating what the conditions were, basically with your back to 43rd Street looking south. The space had been divided. There was a corner space, and then down by the vault, there's another commercial space. The ceiling you can see here by 2011, actually by 1989, the entire ceiling had been replaced once by the bank. And then subsequently after designation, the ceiling was replaced again. So the ceiling that is there today is actually the third generation of ceiling, although the concept is still there, this luminous ceiling. This is up on the second floor. The bank owned the sculptures. So when the bank left, they took the sculptures, but then they were repatriated back to the building, fortunately. So they came off site and they've been back. But this is a photograph, obviously looking west at that granite wall on the west wall of the second floor, and the escalator in its historic location, which then has been rotated 90 degrees facing east-west. And then some photographs from street views, just illustrating the sort of progression, the retail progression. So this is from 2014 when Joe Fresh was in place. There was large solid signage across that second floor slab, internally illuminated with fixturing all around the perimeter. And you can see that in this image. This next slide, North Face came in, used the same sign panels, internally lit signage with fixturing around the perimeter. But again, occupying just half of the first floor and all of the second floor. A photo from 2018 showing how North Face has merchandised the perimeter of their space over time, changing the signage, putting up more solid screens and signage around the perimeter. This has been sort of a changing quality of their installation over time. And then coming to today. So a series of existing photographs. This is on the ground floor looking back to the corner. This entry where the railing on the right and the walk-off mat, that's all post 2011 because the entry had been on the left margin of that photo, but now two entries on Fifth Avenue. You also get a sense of the ceiling lighting. The ceiling lighting historically and today is all fluorescent. And it is not in great shape. There's tremendous variation across the ceiling. And part of this project also involves removing the fluorescent lighting and installing LED across the first and second floor. So there'll be a much more uniform finish and as an even light as was originally intended. I'll also just point out where that exit sign is. That's a sort of a frame that's installed inboard of the doors. That was also part of the reconstruction of the interiors for loss prevention. There's a sort of magnetic reader that's in that. So the ceiling I mentioned, that had been replaced in 2011. The floor also, the terrazzo floor with the moving of the escalator and the condition of the floor, the terrazzo floor was replaced at that time too. So all of the flooring across the first floor and the second floor is 12 years old. So the ceiling, the floors, and even some of the column enclosures, particularly those that were supporting the mezzanine, those two were reclad as part of that overall project. This is a view now looking with your back to 43rd Street across. You can see the escalator now in its current location. Here, you can see it in this little key plant, and then this partition wall separating the commercial retail space here, this space here, which is now vacant. There's a wall that divides those with a clear story above to have some connection. But those spaces that's ground floor space is currently divided in two. Some other photographs across the second floor. You can see the fixturing around the perimeter, particularly along the 43rd Street side, and the escalator on the left margin of that photo. The elevator, this is a new elevator that was installed in circa 2011. And this is sort of looking at that slab edge of the second floor and the curtain wall just to the left of it. But you also get a sense of the sort of irregularity of the ceiling with that fluorescent lighting that exists throughout the space. And then the bank vault. So this, as I mentioned, prominently on display right on Fifth Avenue for everybody to walk by and see. The vault door remains in the gate. And then on the back side, the photo on the right, the perimeter wall has been removed, and you can see just on the floor, there's a stainless steel frame that marks the outline of the vault space. Ceiling lighting in this area has also been replaced. And then some other interior photographs. Again, photo 4 just illustrating the conditions of the light, where these plexi panels have been taken off, and you can see the fluorescent lighting and just the conditions within these new entries off of Fifth Avenue. And then lower left, the view sort of within the vault space looking west. I'm turning to the second floor, so you can see the escalator in its new location. So the escalator is here at platforms in about this area, but this is the Bertoia sculpture here. So it's completely dissociated from the escalator. And so right now it's kind of lost in that back corner of the second floor. And so the intent is to bring it forward and bring it closer to the top landing of the escalator, so that there's that axial relationship that was intended in the original layout. And you get a sense of the fixturing around the perimeter of the space, at the edge, the south wall, around the second floor. A view north across the second floor, again, the perimeter signage, this sort of metal framework that is used to hang merchandise, but also signage around the edge of the space. And then looking back to the sculpture, the Bertoia sculpture on the west side, that screen. Right now, there's a black painted wall that's really hard up against it, beyond which is stockroom and fitting rooms. And so you lose the transparency of that screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that wall down and move it back for stockroom, but there'll be clear space on either side that'll allow for the passage of light through the sculpture. So the relocation of the sculpture to the top of the escalator, and also the enhancements at the back of the screen, we think will be real improvements to the space. A few details at the corner, column enclosures, fixturing to the perimeter. And this idea of transparency obviously was important to North Face in terms of their fixturing. The same in the way our fixturing has been designed, in that these are open metal frame fixtures that you'll be able to see through and around as part of the proposal. Some additional interior photographs at the slab edge, that glass railing also installed in 2011. So much of the interior fabric is actually quite recent. And then again, the Bertoia sculpture, that's that black wall I mentioned, right directly behind it. And as you saw in the historic photograph and plan, the idea was that there was activity on either side of that. There were desks on either side. So we're going to try and reclaim that as part of this effort. So turning to the proposal. So this is a proposed elevation along Fifth Avenue. As I mentioned, other than some small decal signage, there is no exterior work both on Fifth Avenue as well as the 43rd Street side. And the key has been to position fixturing where it is taller fixtures on the back solid walls, lower fixtures around the perimeter. All those fixtures are just clean, simple metal open fixturing. At the second floor, you can see that on the slab edge. That's about 9 feet back from the facade of the building. In blue hatch is the LED signage that's proposed. It's aligned and tied to the slab edge and the column grid. You can see that in elevation, the relocated Bertoia sculpture shown from that elevation. And then across the ground floor, you see mannequins. Those are going to come and go. There's no fixturing across the whole Fifth Avenue elevation. So you're seeing directly into the space and even at the corner. The two key plans represent the first floor and the second floor. There's some small signage, 19-inch square signage that's proposed on the interior on that aluminum stainless steel frame at the entries, both at the two doors. But that's the extent of it. It really sort of serves almost more like wayfinding signage for pedestrians at the sidewalk level. And then turning around to the 43rd Street elevation, this is the longer elevation at 125 feet. That's that corner sign we refer to as a cube, but it's really sort of an angle. A similar proportion or organization, open fixturing along the interior edge of the second floor slab, and then fixtures at the ground floor. There's a secondary entry back to the back of the space the key plan here, just proposing decal signage on those doors or small scale decal signage. But I think a few things again to point out the sort of relative scale of the first floor and the second floor, but also the scale of the signage relative to the overall transparency of this elevation. This is an existing plan just indicating the fixturing that's across the ground floor and the designated space across the top edge of the plan. And then a proposed plan for the ground floor. So you see that central location of the escalator again in its recent non-historic location, those two entries off of Fifth Avenue, and then fixturing all clear off of the Fifth Avenue facade, clear views of the vault door and into the space. And then fixturing along, just open metal fixturing along a portion of the 43rd Street elevation. There are 4 different fixture types that are proposed as part of the interiors. There are low 4.5 foot tall sort of tables. There are fixtures at 8 feet, 9.5 feet, and then 13 feet. And those have been positioned sort of strategically around the space so as to allow views sort of around and through, with the tallest fixtures along the back walls, the solid back wall. So this is the ground floor plan, and then an overlay of just indicating the area of designation. So that that southern half or third of the ground floor is outside the designated space. There'll be a cash wrap and fitting rooms and other features in that space, but that mark on the floor that will remain legible, that define the wall of the historic vault, that remains legible. And then of course treatments in the balance of the designated space. Just a little bit on that perimeter signage. I mentioned there's decal signage on the doors similar to what North Face has, and then 2 signs directly above the doors just behind the glass, non-illuminated at 19 inches square. So I mentioned the different fixturing types. The green tables, those are 4.5 foot tall tables that sit on the floor. The blue fixturing, that's at 8 feet. The yellow is at 9.5 feet, and then the upper left, the white detailed is 13 feet. And so some of these have backs, particularly the taller fixtures. Those have backs. Those are against the back walls of the space. And then the others are open. So the blue fixture and the yellow fixture in particular, where they're in the perimeter, they're just open frame fixtures, and they'll have merchandise on them. But the idea is that they sort of are tied into this notion of transparency. So you'll be able to see through them in their installation. Turning to the second floor, so this is an existing plan, again, showing where the perimeter fixturing is. The partition spaces behind the Bertoia sculpture on the west side of the second floor, and then a proposed plan here. So again, on the perimeter, the 9 foot tall yellow fixturing along the slab edge, that's all open. And I think seeing it in plan, it might seem more imposing than it does in that rendering or even in the elevation, because those are not even half as tall as the ceiling height at the second floor. So the goal always is to not only see through them, but to see over them so that the ceiling is not obstructed. And then you can see the corner sign in plan in blue, and a few other things just to point out. So this is the Bertoia sculpture here. So it's clear on either side. There'll be activity. There's fixturing on one side, and then this is sort of a cash wrap on the other side. So similar to the way the historic use was, that screen divided 2 different uses, but there was activity on both sides. So you'll be able to see through it with light, but also activity. And then across the south side of the plan, across the top of the plan, fitting rooms along that wall. And again, all of the perimeter, so the wall on the plan north, which is the south side, and this side, west side, everything along the perimeter, none of it is full height. It all allows the perimeter walls to read through. The side elevation on the west side is finished a gray marble wall. 4 or 5 feet of that is visible above the stock room along that side of the room. Some details on this corner sign. So similar to the fixturing, all of this is designed in a reversible manner. So it sits on posts just inboard of the railing. It is 13 foot by 13 foot on each side, which sounds enormous, but think in terms of the overall scale of the elevation and the ability to see under it, around it, over it, I think the renderings illustrate really very clearly how this, while it's bringing identification to the space, it's in keeping with the sort of newness of the space, but it's also in terms of its proportion, we think compatible and comfortable with the overall elevations on both sides. So you see upper right, the sort of axonometric views, how it will mark the corner. The column will be mirrors around across the base for the retail use, and then the current marble cladding all visible on the upper register of these columns, but all the columns across the second floor. We did this graphic too, I think, just to sort of illustrate again the sort of proportions of these signs. And I think it's interesting to sort of think about the overall elevation at the first and second floors. So basically, in looking at the overall area of the first and second floors relative to the sign, this represents 5% of the overall area of each of these elevations. It's 5% on Fifth Avenue and 5% on 43rd Street. And I know you all, this is something that the commission is wrestling with, this kind of signage. But I think what's interesting is thinking about, I know you all reviewed a project in Ladies Mile last month, the month before, where there was LED video signage approved under that application. And those screens were 18 feet tall, about 6.5 feet wide, but they occupied as a percentage much more area than what we're talking about here. And obviously the architecture, the international style modernist architecture is very different than that sort of 19th century store and loft structure. But in that Ladies Mile project, one of 2 bays was occupied by a video screen, so 50%. And on the Fifth Avenue side, one of 8, so 12%. So here, sort of relatively speaking, this is actually considerably smaller in the overall elevation of this building. And of course, as I mentioned at the outset, the sort of newness of this building, it's very different. It's an interior landmark. It's an individual landmark. It's not a building in a district, but I think the scale of it relative to the overall elevations is pertinent in this discussion. A series of sections now, just to illustrate, this is sort of looking through the escalator, the entry off of Fifth Avenue on the right, the repositioned Bertoia sculpture, and then the fixturing around the perimeter. Clearances above all the fixtures on the ground floor. The ceiling heights there are about 11 feet. So there's a little less clearance above those. And then the second floor where the ceiling heights are at about 20 feet, significantly more clearance above there. Some details on the fixturing, sort of how they're going to be positioned around the columns. There'll be mirrors sort of integrated into them. Lighting will be integrated into the fixtures themselves to minimize attachments and things like that to the columns. Speaker strobes, things like that, those will be required. We're working those out as to sort of where those will be located. Around the escalator opening, we're also proposing an LED monitor that would sort of animate that animated section. So again, this is sort of the new location of this escalator. So as you're passing from the first floor to the second floor, that interior slab edge, again, all new fabric, building fabric, that interior slab edge would have a video monitor around the perimeter just to bring a little bit of animation to this place of motion going from the first to the second floor. Looking at some of the fixturing, some LED neon signage integrated into the fixtures for wayfinding and things like that. This is located in the back corner of the second floor, just to guide people around this fairly large floor area. Some other details. This is the back wall now of the second floor. So again, this is stock room here, and you can see this is the granite of this back wall that remains. So this will be built in the front of it, and then the cash trap. This is all behind the Bertoia screen, and then the historic fabric, the granite directly above that, visible above the new construction. And then a series of renderings. So you saw this view. This is on along the Fifth Avenue side. So what we've done here is we have the image here with just the GU, and you get a sense of the views into the space around the sign, obviously, and then flipping it to some other imagery that could be on this sign. So I think this would be a video screen, as we mentioned, so there would be some animation, but I think seeing it in the context of the ground floor space, it is obviously in its form sort of compatible with the cube-like nature of the building itself, but also really allows for views in, which is really sort of the key goal of the way this has been designed. Corner view with the static GU or a different image. And I think, the corner fixturing has been held away from the corner in its entirety, so you'll be able to see directly into the ground floor. And then, of course, at the second floor, you can see over. This sign at the corner is set 8.5 feet back from the perimeter. We think that's it's a significant number that's just sort of at the slab edge, but it's held back from the property line, which is a significant dimension. And then the 43rd Street elevation, fixturing along the ground floor. Again, you can see through, if you look at this, you can see the escalator and the motion that will come with that. And at the second floor, the two Bertoia sculptures, and then the signage at the corner. I think it's significant too in this view where you see the corner sign, you're seeing through the curtain wall system. So with that 8.5 foot setback, it doesn't interfere with the perimeter architecture of the building. It's really sort of an independent feature that operates sort of in conjunction with the new material and new elements that are part of the new retail use. A few renderings on the inside, the ground floor looking at the escalator, the new sort of even luminous ceiling, and then the fixturing around the ground floor. At the second floor, the repositioned Bertoia sculpture looking at the perimeter, the sort of open metal frame fixturing around the perimeter and the backside of the corner sign, which will be finished in a stainless steel. And then a view looking west, again with the two Bertoia sculptures sort of seen in conjunction with that video screen around the slab edge of the escalator. Just for reference, we also took a look at the way some of these interior spaces, challenging interior spaces, have been adapted for new uses. And just 3 examples here where the commission has sort of accepted sort of new uses within historic spaces. This is the lobby of the AT&T building right here at 195 Broadway, where the commission approved a master plan for retail installations, which included fixturing up to and wall partitions up to 8 feet, perimeter lit signage. This idea that these sort of additive features can be found appropriate in these historic spaces where the spaces still read very clearly. This is a 30-foot tall ceiling. So I think, there may be obstructions sort of at eye level, but you're always able to sort of see over those to the ceiling. And that's not unlike what is planned for at 510 Fifth Avenue. This is a perimeter view. These are what were referred to at the time as lanterns. They're internally lit hanging signs, which are around the perimeter of the ground floor, both on Fulton, Broadway, and Day Street. And they mark each of the retail spaces. Currently, Anthropologie is in one space, Nobu is in another, and one of the 3 spaces is actually still vacant. Some other interior views, again, where you see this sort of high partitioning, the signage, fixturing across the floor, but still views around the space and of the historic features. Bridge Market, it's an exterior landmark, but the interior, in part because of the Guastavino ceiling tile, is considered almost like a landmark space. So the way this has been regulated for market use, again, sort of relatively tall fixtures, which at the ground level sort of obstruct views, but allow you to see over them, to see the ceiling. Obviously different architecture, but also we think important to sort of think of in the context of the work that we're proposing here. And then just the third example here, the interior of the Immigrant Savings Bank on Chamber Street, directly outside, where again, sort of thinking about how these interiors, which were very purposely designed for a particular use, have been adapted. And here, obviously the animation of the art projections, but also these very large partitions. So on the Reed Street side, a solid wall built against the Reed Street elevation, which changed the sort of illumination and the daylighting of the space, and sort of a more flexible curtain on the other side. But again, this idea of this sort of reversibility of these installations to allow for new uses. And then finally, just returning back to our project here on Fifth Avenue and this view on the Fifth Avenue elevation. So I think, as I mentioned, the key components of this has been really to sort of focus on the transparency of the space, but to also enhance the luminosity and the artwork that exists within the interior. And those are key pieces of the design, but also, of course, the reversibility. So all the work, any physical attachments is happening into non-historic material and is something that can be peeled away very easily. And I think thinking too about the sort of the DNA of this building, and that the idea that this was intended to be usable for other uses, this notion of the convertibility, easily convertible. And that was really sort of what the bank president charged the architects with at the outset. And we think this new use fits within that and could hopefully be found appropriate.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
On page 12, at the corner, there is a north face sign cube. And I'm curious if you know the dimensions of that compared to what is being proposed. I realize this is more forward, the north face, than what you're.
Better proportion. I'm not going to be able to give you a number, but let me just get to. Oops, it's there. Yeah. So it's higher up. That might be 8 feet square. I'm not sure what the dimension is. Of course, it's, their signage has changed. We've obviously been talking with the staff about our application for months and talking about this. Our understanding is that the North Face has changed their signage, perhaps not always for the permit. So some of that's sort of with a grain of salt, but the way they merchandise. So this is the approved signage that was first installed by the previous retailer. They reused that, and then they added signage, and there's a sort of more of a solidity, let's say, to the way they treated the perimeter. And even today, with the sort of framework that they hang merchandise off of and sort of screen signage. So thank you. Yes.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Goldblum.
Corey, what is our jurisdiction regarding fixtures?
Let Gloria and Mark take that.
Just instead of describing the fixtures.
But typically, the commission has jurisdiction over fixtures that are actually fixed to the ground, and also things that are generally deemed sort of not movable, right? So it's the gray area.
So in this particular application, are we looking at the fixtures, let's say, that are at the perimeter of the edge of the floor or at the perimeter windows as being fixed or as being movable?
I think what we determined was that they were large enough, they weren't sort of modular pieces that can be slid in and out, that they result in the arches, which is something that essentially is physically attached, and it's big enough, it's heavy enough that it can't be used. It's a large piece of insulation, not smaller pieces that can be pushing around.
Okay, good. And can the cloud, was that originally visible from the street? Its original location?
Yeah, you see it through the curve wall. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Other questions? All right. Let's move to public testimony, and we'll come back to the applicant after that. We'll start with everyone in the room, and then we'll move to any remote participants. So we're going to start with Andrea Goldwyn.
Good morning, Chair Carroll and Commissioners. I'm Andrea Goldman, speaking on behalf of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The Manny building, completed in 1954, is a true masterpiece of the international style that changed the way New Yorkers viewed architecture.
Could you stop just a sec? That mic isn't working well. I think you need to swap it out. Okay.
First time back in hearing.
Yeah.
Should I start over?
Yes.
Okay, is this one working? Wonderful. Good morning, Chair Carroll and Commissioners. I'm Andrea Goldwyn speaking on behalf of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The Manny Building, completed in 1954 to the designs of Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, is a true masterpiece of the international style that changed the way that New Yorkers viewed architecture. In 2011, we supported designation of this building as an interior landmark, noting that the glass curtain walls and the public interiors were designed as one so that the interior and exterior could be enjoyed simultaneously. A few months later, we largely supported an application to alter the building in conjunction with a new retail use. In the years since, we've seen some improvements, notably the return of the Bertoia sculptures, and some disappointments as signage and retail installations have cluttered the precise facades and diminished the experience of the building. Not every inch of the interior is included in the designation, but in true modernist fashion, every detail of the interior is an ornament that collectively defines the structure. The application before you today presents an opportunity to reestablish the characteristics that define this landmark. Therefore, we hope that you will urge the project team to exercise more restraint, to reduce the size and amount of LED signage at the facade and the escalator, to make the retail displays and fixtures smaller and push them back away from the windows, to reconsider video monitors in the undesignated portion that will block the designated vault, and overall, to give this iconic architecture some space to breathe and let it speak for itself. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Conservancy's views.
Thank you. All right, Theodore Grunwald.
Good morning. I am Theodore Grunwald. I am the founder of the Coalition to Save Manufacturers Trust. And I'm also a contributor to the book everyone's talking about, Regulatory Capture, Watching a City Commission Lose Its Way, the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission under Mayor Bill de Blasio, 2014 to 2021. If you haven't read it, you should. When I founded the Coalition to Save Manny-Hanny in October 2010, our advocacy and legal action led to and won a significant legal settlement on November 22nd, 2011, that returned the Bertoia sculptures to 510 Fifth Avenue in, quote, perpetuity, provided the building remains a landmark, close quote, and stipulates that the present and future owners agree not to build any material addition above the existing building. My testimony is image heavy. If you do not already have a copy of it, please go to Ted Grunwald, Grunewald, on Twitter. It's the second tweet down, and you can see all the images that I'm talking about. So we're going to go through this pretty rapidly because there isn't much time. I also noticed there are 3 commissioners here today who were with us in 2011 and 2010, but many of these design issues are new to you here. So please do especially pay attention because I know this building inside out and backwards and forwards. I recommend the commission deny this application for the following reasons. 1, the relocation of the Bertoia cloud to a new place in front of Bertoia's Golden Arbor screen pits the 2 sculptures in an ahistoric symmetrical relationship where they compete against each other visually, moving the Bertoia cloud sculpture away from its historic location just behind the Fifth Avenue glass facade, where it is visible from the street. People ask me, where did it go when it vanished? Guy Tribet of the New York Times called me and said, where's the cloud? They took it away. Moving it to an alien location above the escalators, deep within the center of the building, robs passerby of views of this extremely significant and pioneering example of mid-century public art. We strongly instead recommend relighting the cloud so it is more prominently visible from the avenue. Number 2, The installation of mirrored sleeves around the lower half of the columns on both levels, highlighted in yellow in my diagram, dematerializes the columns contrary to the 1954 design's intense, expressive clarity of structural support. Shelving should not directly abut the columns, but be separated from them. The LED display collar signage that rings the ceiling hatch around the escalators, highlighted in chartreuse on my diagram, is a distractingly busy item that detracts from the Bertoia screen against the west wall, which is ahead of the visitor as they travel up to the second floor. Number 4, blocking the first floor vault opening. Oh, I'm running out of time. So just to wrap up, please go through each of my items. It's well illustrated and well documented, and I'm just going to close, if I may, with my final item, which I'm very excited about. We're very excited about the demolition of some of the inappropriate or unsympathetic aspects of the 1912 alterations. One of the most exciting, of course, that we're pleased about, of course, is the freeing of the Bertoia screen so that visitors will be able to experience the sculptor's original design intentions. And we're also thrilled with the demise of the demising wall, because it restores the space to its original grandeur. And we highly recommend a return. You'll see in number item 2 of things we like.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I believe you're over time. Could you
Okay.
please?
Just to sum up, the historic blue accent wall in the 1954 building matches the colors rather happily of the logo of GU, the blue and the gold. So with the gold Bertoia and the blue walls, it'll be very nice corporate identity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I'll note that there's no one else in the hearing room to speak, so I will turn it over to Gregory Kalla to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a few remote participants with their hands raised. The first we'll be hearing from is John Graham from Victorian Society, New York. John Graham, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And once you are a panelist, please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society, New York. Founded in New York City in 1966, the Victorian Society in America is dedicated to fostering the appreciation and preservation of our 19th and early 20th century heritage. The New York chapter promotes preservation of our historic districts, individual landmarks, interiors, and civic art. 510 Fifth Avenue is obviously not a building which is within our normal area of attention. However, we feel that because there are so few designated interior landmarks, it is acceptable, possibly even required, to step outside our mandate. The great transparency that SOM achieved at 510 Fifth Avenue and the way the interiors are displayed to the world means that every restoration of the original is to be celebrated. We were therefore very happy to see that the ground floor demising wall is to be removed. However, we also feel that further refinement is possible during this once every 20 years remodeling. On board LPC 5, we can see the original location of the Bertoia sculpture wall, west of the last row of north-south columns. It's now east of that row of columns. It should be restored to its original location. We can also see that the Bertoia cloud has been restored to its original location, a spot visible to pedestrians on Fifth, where it was for 70 years. Unfortunately, board SD GU 3.0 calls for the cloud to be moved. We feel this is an inappropriate change. We could accept more sensitive lighting, but the sculpture should remain in its original location. Finally, we have often testified against the use of overly large LED signage and display units placed where they block views into retail spaces at buildings within historic districts. We believe this is much more destructive in the case of an individual landmark celebrated for its transparency. The applicant should reduce the two blue 13-foot tall LED signs proposed for the northeast corner and reconfigure the display units to maintain transparency. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Liz Waitkiss from Docomomo. Liz Waitkiss, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Liz Waitkiss for Docomomo US. Docomomo US appreciates having the opportunity to review the proposed alterations to 510 Fifth Avenue, Manufacturers Trust Company building, individual and interior landmark. It is, however, challenging to review all of the proposed changes in the course of just a few days prior to today's hearing. We suggest that the LPC more strongly encourages applicants to seek out stakeholders with an interest in a given project. Such outreach might quell speculation or last-minute concerns and help stakeholders understand the proposed goals and alterations of a given landmark. Lest we remind the Commission, in 2012, stakeholders found out about the last round of changes at 510 Fifth, not through the agency, but through concerned citizens walking by the building who noticed the interior had been gutted without notice. As to the proposal before you today, Docomomo US believes 510 Fifth Avenue is one of New York City's most significant 20th century designs because of its interior designation, location, and public access. Docomomo US does not find the proposed alterations or signage to be in keeping with the LPC designation report from 1997 that describes in the findings and designations section that the monochromatic Manufacturers Trust building is notable for the spare elegance and refinement of its design, that the design's transparency and the articulation of the underlying skeletal structure of the building led the Architectural Forum to praise Manufacturers Trust as the first big building truly to fulfill the architect's immaculate drafting board idea of glass as invisible material. Any signage at 510 Fifth Avenue should be minimal and secondary to the architecture. Likewise, we find the dense shelving system in front of the windows to be out of harmony with the building and the designation description. We would like to see far less inventory blocking the view inside and to the outside from within. Docomomo US is concerned about the Bertoia sculptures and the need to move the cloud sculpture over the escalators. We do not find it ideal to move the sculpture to a non-historic location. We consulted with Celia Bertoia, and she stated it would be challenging to move it as it is delicate and an uneven sculpture that could be bent or damaged if set down or held improperly. This proposal also seeks to remove the protective wall from behind the Bertoia screen and open the area behind it as a cash wrap. That would open the sculpture up on all sides without any protection. While we like the idea of the public being able to see the sculpture from all sides, more attention should be made to protect it from someone falling into it or vandalism. Lastly, Celia Bertoia asked us to communicate that the plaque for the screen has a glaring error on it that says George Bunshaft rather than Gordon Bunshaft. It would be best if that error could be fixed along with this proposed changes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, once you've been promoted panelist, please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC appreciates the applicant's apt point that this building was built to be adaptable to uses beyond banking. We support adaptive reuse here and citywide. We also note that in addition to being adaptable, this building was designed to have, quote, an inviting look, which is part of why it was conceived as a transparent glass box. Pedestrians could see in from the street directly across the interior expanse of the banking floors. For that reason, we find the proposed wall-based shelves positioned directly against the windows inappropriate. They don't allow pedestrians a view across the building's interior and thereby disconnect the interior from the street. We ask that the applicant move the proposed wall-based shelves away from the windows. We also have concerns over changes regarding the two historic sculptures by Harry Bertoia, including the need to move the extremely fragile cloud sculpture to a non-historic location and removing some of the existing protections around the wall sculpture. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We also have one hand raised from a 347 number. So if this is you, I'm going to allow you to talk. And once you are unmuted, please state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Thomas Collins. I'm calling in from Boston. I've submitted written testimony, but I just have a few comments I'd like you to consider. While I share many of the comments here, I'm very excited to see the space return to single tenant occupancy and some of the demising walls on the first floor removed. I'm concerned about a number of aspects, particularly regarding the amount of signage and retail shelving along the perimeters that obstruct views into the space. The applicant has referred to their alterations as being highly transparent, but I would encourage the commissioners to look at the original Ezra Stoller photographs and compare that to what's being proposed and what currently exists. You'll see that a lot of the interior is obstructed from the street, and I know this is an interior landmark, but the separation between exterior and interior is so inseparable here that so much has been lost with prior alterations and what's being proposed. I think eliminating the vertical shelving along the second floor would do a great amount to increase transparency. The other point that others have raised is the removal of the, I should say the relocation of the Bertoia sculpture to a new place over the escalators. I get the intent there, but I think there's a wide consensus now that the relocation of the escalators itself was not a winning move in the 2012 alterations. And I think bringing it closer to the larger screen changes how the viewer experiences the sculpture, which is the cloud sculpture is quite delicate. It consists of hundreds of steel wires, and I just don't think relocating it does it any favors. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 5 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you very much. So I'd like to ask the applicant team if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard.
Thank you, and always good to have the discussion. The discussion of the community board was fascinating, and this discussion today as well. I think John Graham referred to this sort of as a once in every 25-year opportunity. I think it is telling that the two tenants who have been in this location have been there for 6 or 7 years. This is a difficult location, despite the bank president's goal of making this convertible and adaptable. It's a difficult location for retail use, for new uses. With that said, I think the scheme that's been developed sort of strikes the balance of sort of allowing for the transparency around the perimeter. It allows for the merchandising that is required to make a store work, which I'm not sure if any of the commissioners have been in the current store, but it feels more like a showroom than a store right now, because in part there's very little going on. And I think the design team has sort of worked to sort of strike a balance between these fixtures, which while they are regulated because of their height, some of them need to be anchored to the floor, they are movable, reversible, et cetera. And I think that's a key piece. And I think there was a lot of discussion about clarity of structure and being able to see in and around, and that's really an essential part of from the earliest conversations we've had together about striking this balance between allowing for fixturing but also allowing for clarity. And so some may agree that we have met that threshold. Others may think that the clarity isn't there, but I think it is something that we've certainly endeavored to meet. The idea of moving fixtures, I think it's important to note the fixtures on the second floor, which are not even half the height of the ceiling, are 9 feet back from the perimeter. The fixtures on the 43rd Street side, those are at the glass. And we're happy to work with the staff and sort of adjusting the position of those to allow for more transparency. I think it's important to note in this rendering, the corner is open, so you're seeing directly into the space, and all the fixtures themselves are just, sort of simple 1-inch square metal tubes. So while there will be merchandise on the shelves, those are all open. And finally, I just want to address the discussion about the artwork. The team, of course, is going to take, the utmost care in any moving of artwork, and proper professionals will be engaged to do that. Obviously, it has been moved at least twice already, and we're confident that it can be moved safely. Art handling is a profession, and the professionals will be doing this. The discussion, and Commissioner Goldblum, you asked the question about sort of seeing the sculpture from the outside. Today, you can see it from Fifth Avenue. We think actually the sight lines will allow for you to see it from 43rd Street, but I think it's also important to remember that this is an interior landmark, and so obviously the whole interior volume is part of the sort of open public space that would be understood. Regarding the screen wall, there was some concern about actually removing that wall that's directly behind it. We think actually that's a great improvement because it'll allow for light to actually move and see activity through that as it was originally intended. So I'll certainly say in terms of the artwork, there's great care that will be given to all this. We haven't discussed this, but we're happy to collaborate with the artist's wife. Certainly, that's always a remarkable opportunity. And so, the goals here, as I said at the outset, are about transparency, about the inside out, letting the building read. There's no impact to the curtain wall. The additive features, even the ones that sort of are around the base of the columns, are just not anchored to, but just around the base of the columns. But the columns and their stone cladding are very legible and a key component of the interior features of this design. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Yes, Commissioner Master.
In terms of the decision of moving the cloud sculpture, was the primary reason to move the cloud sculpture because you wanted it with the escalator? Was there another reason?
So that's part of it. There's also just sort of the layout of the space, and so it has a little bit more breathing room if we move it from its current location. But it was sort of a combination. But to us, it made sense because historically there was this sort of axial relationship between the entry, the escalator, and the sculpture, and so we thought that was actually a good place to reorient it.
All right. Any other questions? Final questions? All right, then I think we'll move to close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion? Commissioner, would you second the motion?
Sorry, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll begin our discussion now. We have a number of components to discuss on the exterior of the building. The only thing that's being proposed are small decals at the entry doors. On the interior, there are fixtures that include tables, open backed 8-foot high shelving, and then 9.5-foot shelving and 13-foot shelving that have backs. I think the 13-foot ones are all against the back walls of the space. There's also the relocating of the Bertoia sculpture. And then finally, on the interior signage plan, we have non-illuminated signs right behind the entry doors, the cube sign at the corner, and then LED signs integrated at the second floor slab of the escalators and also integrated within some of the fixtures. And so we'll have try to cover all of those aspects of the project in our discussion. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you start this one?
Yes, walked by the building many times, and I think it may have been conceptually designed to be totally flexible for other uses. But I think what we're dealing with now is we have a individual and interior landmark that doesn't work as its original use. So, and clearly it's some sort of retail at this location. And I think there's a lot positive to be said about this proposal. And I think the point made, having walked by it, it did look often more like a showroom than a retail space in the previous. So in general, I think this is good. It's been thoughtfully done. It makes sense. My one question, I'll be curious what the other commissioners say, is the size of the corner sign. At the same time, as was pointed out, is a percentage of the whole facade, it's fairly small. And because it's up 20 feet and on one side, 8 feet behind the glass, it needs to be fairly big so somebody can see it from the street or walking by or driving by. So I could see tweaking that a bit if, depending on what others say, but in general, I think this is a good proposal.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, it's been alluded to. It's good to see a use coming to this important building. Many of us have walked past there since our architecture days. And it's a difficult location for as the applicant stated. You can see North Face struggling with the space. I think that overall the applicant has done a good job in laying out based on the original intent of the space. I love the aspect that bank vault all the time. It's one of my favorite features of the building. And I think that as Commissioner Ginsburg alluded to, the size, I think the size of the corner screen is something that I'd like to hear what the rest of the commissioner think. But I think the sign and the relocation of this structure in relationship to the escalator makes sense because provided they install it properly. I like the fact that they removed the back screen so that to allow for transparency. So overall, that's where I'm going to.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Bland?
Because of the extraordinary transparency that George Bunshaft gave this back in 1954, to me, by far the most important element in this building is the ceiling. And it's been so disappointing since it's been designated to have the ceiling so badly lit. So I'm in a great applause here for the change of lighting, and I think the LED solution seems, of course, the smart solution, but I think it also will give a consistency to the light. And I'm sure you will take special care to the quality of the light too, meaning the tone, the warmth of the light, so that it again has that extraordinary quality that you see in the Esto, the black and white, even the Esto photographs back originally. So to me, that's just so fundamental to this building, and it's been so fundamentally not dealt with even in the recent iterations. So you're off to a great start in my book by doing that. And I don't need to go through all the other things that you're doing well. I think we've heard them, but I will point out one other seemingly minor issue, and that is the columns. Because of the transparency, the columns are critically important. To see the columns and to surround them with mirrors makes them disappear. And maybe that's your commercial intent, your retail intent, but I think it's the wrong intent. And so somehow those mirrors should be eliminated from the scheme. I do think that the GU sign is just too big. but I'm sure working perhaps with staff to reduce it somewhat. I mean, it can be relatively large there is fine, I think, but it's too big as it is. And finally, I'm a little unclear about the how much the lineup of all of those fixtures right on the edge will really block the view. It's a little unclear how that really works, but it seems to me as if it's maybe too much and should somehow be changed to some degree. I don't know if that's the nature of the fixture itself or just fewer of them. Not unclear. But by and large, I think this is a good start, and I just really applaud the lighting aspect of it particularly.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, so in general, I think it's a very good presentation. I think that the interior air partitions are closer to the original, that the LED monitor positions don't interfere much with the transparency, that the black signage on the first floor, at the first floor entrance is typical and not damaging any fabric. The entrance signage, I think, is fine. I'm pleased to see, the screen being returning to its prominence and greater visibility. I thought the discussion and testimony about and the historic situation of the cloud is interesting because you have the escalator being moved, so you've got the cloud moving to be in relationship with the escalator, which was, I think, original, and at the same time, it's moving away from the visibility outside. So the question is, what would the artist have wanted? We don't know, but he was someone who liked to see, really looked at how functionality worked with his work and designed it to very functional space. So I think that would have been something that would be appropriate. I agree with some of Commissioner Bland's concerns just expressed. I think in particular, the signage at the corner kind of bothers me, though. When you look at the 1954 Esto example, which is slide 6, I think, and even the North Force signage on the corner on slide 1, and then look at the way the LED signage looks on 4. I think it kind of obscures the corner from my perspective, in the sense that the signage don't have much transparency to it, whereas the 1954 signage and even the North signage has more transparency. You can see around it, through it. And that's partly because it's LED signage, but it's also because you've got two right together, and LED really jumps out at you. So I'd like to see them work on that signage issue on the corner. That's
okay. Great. Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi.
In so many ways, this is a really wonderful project, I have to say. Not only does it fulfill the intent of the original bank president, and his goal is to appreciate and further showcase the jewel that this structure is. But the 3 things that were mentioned at the beginning, this feeling of inside out transparency, and that, and I'm going to start with that. I think it is it's hard to achieve this 100% set glass building, But I think overall, it is mostly successful. And I think with a little bit of tweaking and working with staff, it can even be better. So I'm gonna jump around a little bit, but I do think that the idea of working with staff on the shelving to see if you can maximize the transparency at the second floor. And, you know, without in any way making, you know, it maximize transparency by allowing the space to work effectively as a retail space would be very, very important. I also think transparency wise that, you know, it's true. When I saw that little Esto sign, I thought, oh my God, is there some way that the junior sign could be positioned in a way that it's prominent, but that doesn't block this corner. It's actually a very important corner. And I think this signage, I'm not having a problem with the size. I'm having a problem with the fact that it actually completely goes against with what the intent of this project is, which is to open it. It closes up a very important viewpoint, view in to the space. So I think it needs to do a little more work here with that sign. Because it takes away from the wonderful work that you did. I love the fact that you're showcasing the vaults at the ground floor. It you know, brings the viewer in, and it shows the history of the building. I think, just to go back to signage for a minute, I think mostly the signage is quite good. The decals on the doors are, you know, not obtrusive in any way, very understated. A lot of the interior signage is not mounted on historic fabric, which is wonderful. I don't have a problem with the interior LEDs. They seem to get it. I am kind of thrilled about what's going on with Bertoya. I mean, what an important artist Bertoya is, mid-century artist, and to take away the black wall behind it to provide more transparency and truly appreciation of the piece is astounding to me. I don't really have a problem with moving the cloud. You have to thinking, first of all, the floors being moved. This idea of coming up to the, you know, second floor and seeing this beautiful sculpture, I think is like a perfect way to showcase. And I just keep thinking of the Sarah's sculpture hanging in the airport. And how every time I go into that airport, I'm like, I stand there and stare at it for quite some time, and I'm so happy that it's so visible. Let me just see if there's anything else here. I think. Oh, one more thing that you said at the beginning that I think is very important. Oh, the lighting. You're removing the fluorescent lighting from the ceilings, which I think is a very important thing. Putting in LED lighting. I appreciate that. And then finally, I do think it's very wonderful that this is all reversible.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I think that we are so fortunate that we have a tenant who will be occupying both floors. And because of that, it allows this design that that does have a lot of transparency, and we are able to get rid of a lot of these partition walls and do a lot more to restore the space to kind of its original, to what it was originally, in terms of being very open. I think that this applicant has worked really hard in order to make it very open, and been very respectful. I like the fact that they have thought through in terms of the merchandising and the shelving of having the shelving that's lower height, closer to the windows, and having the ones that are taller on the interior level. So they've really thought through with a goal, as I've said, to be transparent. I think it's important to keep in mind that, you know, they are a retail store and that merchandising is important. So we do have to allow them some flexibility to understand that they are going to have to merchandise, you know, show the clothing, you know, and have the shelving necessary to do their business. The other thing I understand that was a point of some controversy was the moving of the cloud sculpture. And I understand their rationale of wanting to have the experience of the cloud sculpture above the escalator. And I'm okay with that. I think you do lose some visibility on Fifth Avenue, but I understand that the purpose was to have that experience on the interior that that was original to where it was in terms of the relationship with the escalator. I agree with some of Commissioner Bland's statements in terms of the column, but I think perhaps they can work with staff on that. And I'm fine with all of the signage, with the exception of the LED signage on the front. Usually I'm a big proponent of signage because I think it's so important for retailers to establish the brand. And I understand in this situation, you do have 2 floors. And that you don't have a lot of prominent signage. However, in this situation, I do think it overwhelms the building. And I think it does affect the goal of transparency. So I think that they should work with staff to somehow figure out the correct dimensions and perhaps moving it back further, or else making it a little bit smaller because it does overwhelm the corner and the building. Other than that, I find this appropriate.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
Thank you. My view of this project is colored perhaps by my regret about the way it went when we voted on it many years ago. Because I really think that at the time it seemed like the right idea, but for me personally, I think it was in the end bad move. The reason I think that is because I think that the notion of movement through the building has been dramatically changed, and especially one's experience of that movement from Fifth Avenue. But that's yesterday's story. Today, I think the first thought that I had was, I remember when I did a bunch of retail stores and how if you were to pick the perfect building for which you should never ever put retail clothing in it, you'd pick this building. Because what retailers really want is a windowless box with a nice show window that doesn't actually show the store, but that shows more merchandise. This building, because of its interior and exterior landmark status, and because of the nature of the design, prizes to kind of openness that is antithetical to retail, which may explain why the landlord's been having trouble renting it out. So thank goodness for GU that they're making a go of it, and I wish them all the luck in the world. And while I think there are many things about this project that are good, there are many things that I think are deeply problematic. I think that the good stuff is, I think the change of the lighting, like Fred said, is critical, and it'll solve a problem back in the day they couldn't solve, and it'll bring the project closer to its original architectural intent. And I agree with Fred that the ceiling was the prime target of visibility for the project. I also think that the renting the whole bottom floor is a major win for the public, because that whole area around the safe, which is really the kind of the sidewalk attraction of the landmark, is now going to be animated. So that's very important, very good. I think that the moving back of the wall behind the Bertoia wall is another very good move, but I think that that wall should not be painted white as it seems to be proposed. It should be a darker color that at least echoes the dark color that was originally intended to be seen through the wall. You were supposed to see through to the black granite. So I think that the color should be examined with staff. So at least suggest that. Could you turn to page 4773 for a second? I think that the LEDs around the escalators are fine. I think that the I don't have a concern about the mirrors. I guess it's not. It's 43. It's LPC 46 for one up. So now, problem with the job that I have is the fixturing. And what you have here, both on Fifth Avenue and here on 43rd, is you have a 9.5-foot high wall that sits at the perimeter of the entire building, except for an area along Fifth Avenue, on the second floor and on the first floor. And what you're seeing, both on the second floor and on the first floor here, is the backs of displays that are relatively close to the street, that you will see from the street, that is well lit from the street light. And if you ask me, that's the biggest problem here. The fixturing is fatal for me. The fixturing, in my opinion, has to be turned 90 degrees if it's going to be this high. It has to allow for penetration of your eye into the space and not for the creation of a wall, a 9.5-foot high wall at the perimeter of the entire second floor balcony and at the entirety of the 43rd Street facade. Notice it's 3 tiers of clothes high. It's 9.5 feet high. I think that's very tall. And I think what it does, as you can see from the north face layout, which is the same deal, you basically see this armature of metal right up against the side. And so one's sense of being able to visually penetrate into the space is blocked. The fixtures could be turned 90 degrees so that they have the merchandise surface area that they need, but you could see in between it into the space. I think that's critical. I mean, of course, they could. The interesting thing about the fixturing plan is that all the higher stuff, I mean, there's 3 heights. There's low, there's medium, and there's high. This is medium, 9.5 feet. High is like 11 or 12 feet. But all the low stuff is in the middle. But you can't see that from the street. It's blocked by the high stuff. And if you look at the way the building was originally meant to be furnished, it was originally low stuff. It was desks, 2.5 feet, and chairs. So, we're not going back to that, and it has to work in the new use. But I think if they need to put high fixtures at the perimeter, they should be rotated 90 degrees or located further in so that your eye can penetrate, so that the railing allows you to see more than a box that's right inside the storefront or curtain wall. Number one. Number two, I think that the Bertoia sculpture needs to stay the same distance away from the glass wall as it is now. If they want to center it on the new escalators, I think that's fine, but it should stay in the same line that it was historically. And I think that putting it where they're proposing puts it in a way that's kind of competing with the Bertoia wall. And yes, there was an axial quality to it before, but again, that cow has left the barn. And I think that the goal for us should be to maintain a kind of relationship between that sculpture and the street. So I think that the project has many, many very good qualities, but I think that without a significant change to the fixturing, I can't support it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So this has been a really great discussion, and I want to thank all of you commissioners for focusing on all of the work. I think that we have a majority of commissioners who can support this project with some study of the size of the corner sign. I think for some of those commissioners who supported it, the mirror cladding on the bottom half of the columns. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I totally forgot about the corner sign. I think that the corner sign size is fine, but I think they should drop it down so that it's at the top of the floor slab of the second floor. Part of the reason why it's so dominating is that it blocks the ceiling. So if you drop it down, I mean, who needs to see the railing? I think if you dropped it down, that'd be better. One, two, if you separated it so you could see between it at the corner, that'd be better. And three, we saw a couple of weeks ago a project where they were doing an LED scrim that you could see through when it was not very bright. That might also be something they should consider.
Okay. So I think that, again, just sort of summing up, I think that there's a lot of support for this project and for use to be successful here and for retail use to be successful. And I think that there's a lot of support for most aspects of this project. So I think the things that we want you to continue to think about are the size and or location of that corner sign, the mirror cladding at the lower half of the columns, and thinking about the shelving in terms of how you can maximize transparency. And I know it's something that you've thought a lot about already, but I think a little more effort, particularly at the ground floor, I think would be helpful and make some of the commissioners who've commented today comfortable. So I think that's, I think we'll take no action and we'll have you kind of work on those three areas. I think that there have been some suggestions about how to explore those shelvings, either turning them or flipping the lower ones and the taller ones. And I'm sure that the staff can work with you on other ideas as well, because I understand that, you know, you have to be able to merchandise and market. So we have to find that balance. And so we'll take no action and we'll see you back as quickly as we can. All right. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing?
Vice Chair Bland.
I think from a citywide perspective, having GU come and take this difficult, I know, spot, but 43 is almost 42, and Fifth Avenue was once center of gravity. It's now moved up a little bit. But to have you come in and take over 2 floors at a time when New York is still reeling a bit on the retail street level access, and to lose retail at the street level for any city is a disaster, but for New York, it's unthinkable. And I think this is just a great sign of belief in New York that you'll come and do this. So I just wanted to say that. I meant to say it early on, forgot.
Yeah, and completely agree. And I think that we're talking about tweaks here. I think this is generally the overall, the approach has been really sensitive and respectful, and we're just talking about really tweaking. And I think, you know, again, the sort of looking at size or location of that corner sign, I really do think dropping it would allow a view of that ceiling, which we've all sort of talked about as being really important to this space. So, you know, I think this is just sort of final refinements and tweaks, and we'll have you back very quickly.
Yeah, especially from all the way across the ocean as a vote of confidence of this city.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thank you. We'll move to the next item.
The next item is public hearing item number 2, LPC 24-11800, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1412, lot 164, 116 East 78th Street in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is a row house built in the 1860s and redesigned in the Neo-Georgian style by Rouse and Goldstone, 1909 to 10. The application is to legalize excavation at the rear yard in non-compliance with certificate of appropriateness 12-445, LPC 12-3560.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Alberton. I am the architect of record for this project, 116 East 78th Street. This application is to request the legalization of the as-built condition of the rear courtyard and excavation of the project. The LPC, oh, sorry. The LPC issued violations involving the excavation below the rear courtyard and reduced green area within the 5-foot space of the rear property line. Due to some confusion over approvals and a clerical error, the post-approval amendment was not cleared by LPC for approval in 2019. This is why we are requesting the as-built legalization. And I'll go through the presentation quickly, as I know there's a lot for you to talk about today. The project was first approved in 2011 with Lee Harris Architect and was recently completed earlier this year after 13 years of construction. It is a single-family house whose owners had 3 small children when the project started. Now all the kids are out of college and would have moved back into the townhouse with their family and 2 small infants. My office took over the project in late 2017. This is a local map of the block. The house is within the mid-block of East 78th Street between Lexington and Park Avenue. The Anderson School is to the east of the property. The Church of Christ and Northwell Health Facility is to the south within the block. And there's a large multifamily building on the Park Avenue side to the west. Okay, so this is an overhead image showing the neighboring courtyards. As you'll see, there's no internal common green areas as in other parts of Manhattan. There's no grassy areas within the block. Each property has its own definition of landscape. And some of the buildings are continuing up to the property line in the rear of the properties. This is now some close-up views of the rear yard. Ours, the 116, is in the center here with this with the trough. There's no green space in any of the properties except for the 114 to the west of the property, which has never been renovated since the original building was built. To the rear, south of the property, is the church garden, which is here, and then the Norwell Health Facility is to the south without a rear garden. So under our space here, which is in the center, there's an excavated area below the courtyard with limited planting area within the courtyard, within the 5 feet of the rear lot line, which was flagged as unapproved. So on the floor plan, you see there's a mechanical space and courtyard, and the cellar and the ground floor. And the mechanical space does indeed expand to the south lot line. The services of the cellar of the house. The courtyard was intended to have a fountain, but the completion of the fountain was canceled partway through construction. Here's a longitudinal section of the building showing the as-built excavation constructed all the way back to the south property line. And then a more detailed view of the courtyard terrace. The surface and height of the courtyard match the original project approvals and all subsequent amendments. The landmark requirement is to maintain a 5-foot planting area from the south property line into the property. So our request is to legalize the as-built condition and not remediate with demolition. The courtyard currently includes 2 3-foot deep planters along the east and west lot lines for the full length of the courtyard. And this is meant to have tall plants that protect the east and west sides of the courtyard. The mechanical equipment below the courtyard services the townhouse cellar itself. Removing this area would be very detrimental. It's heavy demolition and noise. The mechanical equipment inside this area would require relocation or abandoning piping, equipment, and infrastructure. The demolition and reconstruction would start construction again for another 8 to 10 months. After 13 years of construction on this project, it would be a burdensome reopening of the job site. The only way in and out of the courtyard is through the townhouse itself, which is a finished space and would be very disruptive. The owners would have to move out again through and relocate. And the heavy disruption to the neighborhood and street, which is also used, the street front is used by the Anderson School for their recess activities. So this would affect them as well. Additionally, it would cause heavy disruption to the neighbors again, who have recently signed an agreement respecting the privacy and property boundaries of each other to support a harmonious and friendly environment. This is a wintertime view of the townhouse from East 77th Street. And this view is taken through the garden area of the Church of Christ Scientist. There's existing trees open to views in the rear of the building, and interior courtyards is very limited because of the fence. And then the next image is the same view in the springtime, which have the trees in full bloom. It partially hides the building, but again, the rear courtyard is not viewable from East 77th Street. And now I'd just like to go through quickly just the previous approval of the project to show you how we got to the point where we are. So this is the original townhouse from 1909 to 2011 with the original courtyard garden, some hardscape and some planting areas along the west and south side. Here's a section of that showing the same area with the height. Again, the height of this courtyard has not moved and not changed since that original building was built. This is the 2011 landmark approved plans from Lee Harris Architect. It shows excavation of the cellar. And there's a sub-cellar here as well, which is not shown here. The courtyard garden has perimeter plantings with an area here which is lawn. And here's a more detailed sectional view of that area with the excavation of the sub-cellar and cellar. And again, a more detailed view here showing this lawn area, the hedge, and the two cellar levels below being excavated. Again, that was approved by landmarks in 2011. In 2015, there was an amendment to extend the courtyard, the courtyard and the sub or cellar spaces to the south property lines. And here's again a section of that, again an approved amendment in 2015, showing the full excavation of the cellar and sub-cellar. This is in 2017, another amendment that again was approved by landmarks. And essentially it shows the hardscape with perimeter planting and the fountain in the rear yard. However, this plan removed the sub-cellar and cellar, so the excavation was limited only to the footings and foundation of that area. This again is a detail of that section of the 2017 approval. And this is now the 2019 amendment submittal, which returned the 2015 approved excavation portion of the courtyard with the plantings on east and west side. And I'm just indicating here this green space, which could be an option for a remediation idea of the green space of the 5 feet. But again, the excavated space is something going back to what was previously approved by landmarks. And this is again planned. The green area is an option to do planters, or perhaps we can bring back the fountain, or somehow make reference to the 5-foot requirement. So, by the way, the 5-foot green area requirement would extend almost to about halfway of this terraced area here. The distance between this point and the rear property line is about 3'9". So to conclude, in 2019, the as-built condition was approved by the DOB, which in our experience always included an LPC approval. However, we realized upon the TCO request earlier this year that errors were made in the landmark approval process in the 2019 post-approval amendments. And I take responsibility for not thoroughly checking the expediters worked with this LPC approval. The project has had an extremely long timeline with many construction starts and stops along the way due to unreliable general contractors, project managers taking advantage of the owners, contentious neighbors who have blocked the continuation of work with lawsuits, extended encroachment agreement negotiations, several changes of architects and design teams, and most recently COVID delays. The owners and neighbors have waited over 13 years to finally complete the project and inhabit their home. And at this time, we respectfully request that the Landmark Preservation Commission allow the legalization of this project as built for the area. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, not seeing any questions at this time. We'll see if we have any public testimony. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Okay, noting that there isn't anyone in the room to speak on this item, I will turn it over to Gregory Kalla to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one remote participant with their hand raised, that being Zainab Tehran from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Tehran, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. So please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, hello, Commissioners. Zainab Tehran speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. Friends Preservation Committee strongly opposes the legalization of illegal excavation in its current form. The applicant's failure to obtain a necessary permit demonstrates a flagrant disregard for established regulations. Therefore, we urge the Landmarks Preservation Commission to reject this proposal unless significant green space is added to the backyard as a means of mitigating the environmental impact and compensating for the applicant's previous disregard for the law. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further attendees with their hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you. Would you like to respond to the comment or make any other final statement?
I don't believe that there was any real disregard for the requirements of landmarks. I think the previous approvals of the excavation were already in place, and it was just an evolution of the changes in the project. In regards to the green space, the fountain that was planned there, I think was designed to respond to that requirement of the green space. But the process, I think, is where we got a little bit messed up because of the 2019 approval. We did submit the drawings. We submitted it to our expediter. We actually came before this committee for a tower extension on the building with submitted plans in 2019. That was denied. The tower extensions were denied, but we did go through the process, and it just, because of clerical error and COVID and everything, it just was not followed through. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any final questions, commissioners?
So
Yes,
just to clarify,
Commissioner Goldblum.
the eventual disappearance of the 5-foot space happened because DOB didn't notice that it was on the LPC drawings and they approved subsequent permits?
So my understanding is that this project has, because it's gone on for 12 years with all these amendments, that I'm not sure, but there may have been something with DOB not referring it back to us at some point, but it does seem that over the years, we have approved it, but with a 5-foot unexcavated area. We've approved drawings showing fully excavated rear yard. And the last drawing, the last amendment that came to us didn't show any of the excavation. And so at this point, the as-built condition that they want to legalize is a fully excavated rear yard. And sort of regardless of the iterations, I think the question before us is whether our usual standard of the 5-foot unexcavated area is necessary in this particular context. And so I think it's hard to maybe unwrap or unravel the kind of the history of the iterations, but I think the question before us today is, in this particular context, where all of the yards are paved or full lot extensions or larger buildings, is that standard for the 5-foot unexcavated area, which was really a policy we established to ensure that even when there were excavations, rear yards would have substantial planting that could be contiguous with a central green space, which doesn't exist in this case. So we'll sort of evaluate it on that basis.
Thanks.
And I sorry for missing the earlier part of it, but this is the one historic district where we have on a number of occasions, you all have approved full lot excavations because they, in many cases, do have very small rear yards left over after all of the extensions. And because there's been so much change that there's not a cohesive central green space. So probably above all other historic districts, this is the one where it's happened the most.
Right. Because in fact, historically, these buildings were extended significantly in the past, in the early 20th century. Oh.
And the paving itself is generally not something we regulate heavily. These days, a lot of it's permeable. We want water to drain through. It's just pavers. Sometimes it's engineered though, and it's over a concrete slab and with footings that go out to the lot line. And it's more about that part of it, that it's engineered to the extent that it really nothing could grow, a mature tree or anything like that could grow again. It's less about the paving itself on the yard instead of grass.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Okay, so let's make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
moved.
And Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll begin our discussion now. So as we've sort of already kind of laid this out, but there are a series of amendments over the course of 12 years. The applicant is coming before us today to legalize as-built conditions, which show a fully excavated rear yard. We see that in the original building plan, there is a very small rear yard, sort of more of a courtyard, less of a rear yard, when the building was originally built, and that sort of aligns with the historic alterations to earlier row houses in the early 20th century, when so many of them were built out and built much deeper. And then, of course, there have been subsequent changes and more modern changes with large additions and full lot excavations and additions. So the question, and the commission has generally set up a policy of allowing excavation under the rear yards, provided the plane of the rear yard is comparable to the plane of the other rear yards, if they were ever consistent in the backyard. And if there is a strong central green space, that there be a 5-foot unexcavated area to allow for deep planting that could be contiguous with that central green space. The applicant has shown that in this case that there is no central green space, and the block is very built up. So the question is this excavated rear courtyard appropriate in this context? Commissioner Chapin, would you start this one?
Yeah, okay. I feel that, looking at the history of this, that the actions, that it seems to me that, it was not necessarily an intentional violation. And I also think that looking at the situation, there is no backyard, there's no real, a green space to be preserved, and there also is not, the grade is matching the adjacent rear yard. So I think this is something we would have approved in this particular situation, just because I guess we approved something very similar originally anyway, but we would approve it at this point, just if it came before us. So I think I can, support the legalization here.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi?
I can also, for the reasons that Diana said.
Commissioner Master?
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Chapin.
Commissioner Goldblum? Okay, does everybody else agree? Okay, great. Then I think we'll make a motion. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, thank you. In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, LPC 24-11800, 116 East 78th Street, Upper East Side Historic District. a row house built in the 1860s and redesigned in the neo-Georgian style by Rouse and Goldstein in 1909 to 1910. Application is to legalize excavation at the rear yard in non-compliance with certificate of appropriateness 12-4445 LPC 12-3560. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper East Side Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the excavation of the rear yard was conducted in compliance with the Department of Buildings regulations and did not damage the structural integrity of the building or adjacent buildings, that the grade of the rear yard was retained and matches the grade of the adjacent rear yards on the block, that the block is densely built up, featuring a variety of building types of different sizes and lot coverages. Therefore, the excavation to the rear lot line did not diminish the central green space, and there is a planter box providing greenery, and that the work did not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or of the Upper East Side Historic District.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
That's approved. Thank you. We'll move to the next item.
The next item is public hearing item number 3, LPC 25-00039, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1383, lot 63, 12 East 69th Street in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is a row house designed by William Schickel and built in 1883 to 84 and redesigned in the neoclassical style by William Wells Bosworth in 1913. The application is to replace entrance and fill, lower the areaway, enlarge a masonry opening, modify the rear facade, rear yard and garden wall, and construct rooftop additions.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Erin Ruley, Higgins Place Barth and Partners. We are the preservation consultants for this project. I'm joined today by the architects from Ferguson and Shamamian, Damian Samora and Patrick Suarez. And on Zoom, we have my colleague, Sarah Riffle. There we go. And so what we're going to be looking at today is 12 East 69th Street, which we see at the center of the screen. 12 East 69th is located on the south side of East 69th Street between Madison and Fifth Avenues. In the Upper East Side Historic District, it's a 4-story neoclassical townhouse. And that was reconstructed from an earlier building, earlier row house from the 1880s, designed by Schickel. And let's see, so here we have on the left, this is the reconstruction happened in 1913. This is a 1915 photograph. You can see it's an incredibly austere neoclassical composition. This taut limestone facade, a Greek revival inspired entryway with pilasters and entablature as a surround. The entry door was a 6-panel wooden door solid with a transom above, and it was flanked by fluted pilasters. And then it had a limestone or granite cascading low stoop lined by this sort of very fine attenuated picket railing at the stoop and areaway, as well as up at the second story. And the building stayed largely intact until the 1940s. At that time, it was converted for multifamily use. And we see some of the changes that are pretty typical throughout the district at that time, which is the replacement of the solid door with a new metal and glass door. So in the 1940s, we get the metal and glass door replacing the solid panel, new transom above, and up at the top floor, you'll see new windows too. So those are really the only changes that happened to the building on the exterior throughout its history until the early 2000s. And so we have the existing condition today. In 2007, there were some changes made. They primarily focus on the entry and the stoop. All of the railings had been replaced. At that time, you can see these are a little bit taller and a little more ornamental. And the stoop, the stairs, each of the risers was raised in height. And so and then reclad in this sort of pink granite. So each step gets a little bit taller. There's also an additional step that was added at the top. And at that time, there were also modifications to the surround. So basically what happens is that there's a really high first floor level. We'll look at that in section, but the whole door surround moves up. And all of the, closer to me. And the whole configuration just really changes pretty significantly. There is an areaway off to the left here. And so the changes we're going to be looking at today are specific to the entry infill and the areaway here. And then the rest of the work is being managed at staff level because it's all restorative. We have a very deep sunken areaway. It's actually 2 stories. It goes all the way to the cellar level. And then it's separated by this metal grate that extends spans across the areaway. Diamond plate stairs that go down. And you can see here, there's the very tall areaway railing that sort of obscures your view down into the areaway. And so there'll be some modifications of the level here that'll affect the sill level and the gate under the stoop. So here's the overall proposal. We'll be looking at the entryway, specifically the areaway, and then also up at the rooftop. There's some modifications to bulkheads, some new shade structures, and new mechanical. All that has very limited visibility. And so just in detail, on the left is that a zoom in of the historic door. So that 6-panel solid door with the transom above, and then the existing condition. And so you can see here, it's a little hard to compare, but when the interior floor level was changed, they added a base to the pilaster. They stretched out the capital and they shifted the whole door surround up. And so the proposal would restore the whole surround and the proportions of the opening. The base comes back down, the pilaster is shortened, and the door goes back to its original height. We're restoring the transom and the fluted pilasters that blanket and the new wood paneled door. There is a slight change that needs to occur because of the floor levels. We're going to retain that extra step that was added. We're returning all of the individual treads back to the historic height, but that extra tread at the top needs to remain. And then the door slides back just a foot in order to provide for a more generous entry, which we'll take a look at in elevation and section, sorry. So here, this gives you a good sense of exactly what's happened. You can see how tall these treads are here. And then this is the historic proportion of them. So it really had this sort of cascading effect and historically, and then it was sort of transitioned to this more upright proportion. And then here is the grate that covers the floor of the areaway between the cellar level and the basement. And so we'll be dropping that 1 foot. Dropping the sill of the basement level door. And that is all to accommodate those changes at the floor level, because just to preserve head height at the basement and the existing configuration. So right now the entry level is at 4'7". And so that's why with that added step in the existing condition. And so that would be dropped down to 3'9". So essentially a foot off of that, bringing it lower, and then extending back that top tread in order to give a little more breathing room, comfortable entry, and then the door would be set back there. And this is all treated with a panelized return that we see that's typical in neoclassical buildings throughout the district. We'll take a look at some of those. And then the gate under the stoop would be extended down and replaced in order to cover the new enlarged opening. So here we just get to see the whole proposal in context. You have the existing condition on the left, the proposed at the center, and then the historic on the right. So restoring that cascading condition of the limestone or light granite steps. The railings go back to the historic configuration, and the balconies also, all of the windows get restored to match the historic condition, including this funny little 3/6 window at the top of the building. And then the entryway is just slightly set back, which you see in this center rendered view. And the changes at the areaway are not visible at all because it's so deeply sunken until you're right at the areaway. So just as some context, we've been thinking about how to detail the new location of the door, looking at other examples of neoclassical buildings in the district, solid paneled doors, framed by limestone with recessed panels on the returns. So here are just three examples throughout the district. Moving to the rear, we have a very small rear yard. We're just looking at a similar situation. A very small rear yard, all paved in concrete currently, and we'll be looking at that in detail. Here's the rear facade. It's a painted brick facade with punched openings. All of the windows are currently 6/6. And they, you can see here the distribution of the windows. We have a very wide pier between these two bays, and the proposal will be to relocate this far eastern line of windows to allow for a more symmetrical composition. And at the rear yard, here's the rear yard, the paved concrete area, and then at the access to the rear yard is through the basement. This is the basement door, so you come down the stair, and we'll be reconfiguring all of that as part of the new proposal. Just to give you a sense of the overall conditions, here is the existing rear yard. It has a concrete block perimeter wall on 3 sides. Then looking down, you can see that the adjacent rear yards are all comparable. We have lots of concrete paving, limited footprints with tall walls. And so it's not your typical green space or typical rear yard condition. This view here is looking south towards 68th Street. So backing up to the property, which we see right here, are 2 alleyways from the buildings to the south. So 2 tall buildings here flank the alleyway, and this is a break in the street wall. And so this is the visibility that we'll be looking at for both the rear wall and rooftop development is generated primarily through this small break in the street wall. And again, it's kind of filled with utilitarian goods like trash cans and water bottles and awnings. This is very much a space of utility. So the overall proposal of the rear elevation, you can see the existing condition on the left, which has that stair down to the existing rear yard level. The proposal is to add a terrace. This will just be a deck that's added at the basement level to provide direct access from the house out to that yard level and give it a little bit of outdoor space. The area to the west would not have the deck. That's going to be for isolated mechanical units. And then modifying masonry openings at the basement level and first floor, you can see these 2, but very much consistent with the overall fenestration pattern, just an enlarged opening, punched opening with multi-light windows. This is visible from that alleyway, from the break in the street wall, which is why you're looking at it today. Otherwise, it would meet staff rules. And then up above, relocating that last line between the 2nd and 4th floors of the rear facade. Up above, we have 2 small shade structures that we'll be taking a look at and modifications to the mechanical and the bulkhead. So in section, that deck that we were just talking about, it sets up about 4 feet from existing grade and allows for direct access again from the basement level out to the rear yard. The existing concrete block walls will remain. There'll be a garden screen. It's lattice work or treillage that will surround the yard. You can see that here. And then a planting box will be behind it. This partition here is also the garden screen. It'll just have an operable section to allow access to the mechanicals in the lower side of the rear yard. And one masonry opening gets modified for a window where the door was previously. Up at the rooftop, the roof has a pitch, and so in order to accommodate that, the existing roof decking is a terraced wood decking. And so you can see we're sort of stepping down here, and as we turn around and look the other direction, you'll see it's similar condition, but this is looking south. And so you can see all of the rooftop development in the context. We have small enclosed conservatories and bulkheads, lots of copper and metal accretions that have developed over the years on the tops of buildings. So very much an active roofscape up here. And then just a few more views. This is turning around and looking to the north. So this is toward the front of the building. You can see the terrace wood decking, the existing bulkhead to the right, and then the stepped parapet along this. This is the east side. Both sides of the parapet are stepped similarly. And then at the rear, the existing mechanical units sitting on dunnage. And so at the roof, the proposal is to reconfigure the existing bulkhead. So it's going to orient toward the north, extend down to the north a little bit more. All of the mechanical will be integrated into the bulkhead and above the bulkhead. And this is the mechanical plan here, all with little or no visibility. There's also a mechanical screen added here with another unit at the roof level. There is lattice work proposed along the perimeter of the parapets, and then the two small shade structures at the rear, and a new skylight which is below the parapet level as well. In section, it looks like this. You can see the existing pitch of the roof. It's all maintained. This area below the roof is becoming a mechanical attic. And in order to accommodate that, there's going to be a small soffit that drops down across the 4th floor windows. And so that is located right there. But otherwise, we're looking at the shade structure and the new newly configured bulkhead and mechanical in the distance here, and then some of the lattice work trellises. And then in detail section, you can see the shade structures have a sort of felicitous design to them. They'll have a metal roof structure and then be open with just posts. It'll all be finished this gray-green color. We'll take a look at that. And then the bulkhead will be clad in stucco, but recalling a limestone configuration. It has a cornice. It's all designed and very much consistent with the overall design of the building, and really something that rises to the level of the grandeur of the house itself. And in the section, we can see the cutback of the treillage, and then at the rear as well. Oh, I'm sorry. Back here. This is the mechanical the elevator overrun that's going to pop up above the stuccoed bulkhead itself. That will be clad in zinc, so it will go away. We have some distant views where we pick up a little bit of visibility, and so the zinc is meant to really recede from view, and then mechanical beyond that. Section looking the other way, showing that elevator overrun. And then in axon. So the existing condition on the left, we have all that mechanical and the existing bulkhead. And so the new proposal has the redesigned, reconfigured bulkhead, skylight, and mechanicals, and then these two new shade structures at the rear. And the materials palette, the stucco, that's going to recall the limestone of the facade, the zinc that will clad the overrun and that sort of greeny gray finish for all of the landscape elements at the rooftop. Looking toward the back, the proposed on the right, again, the new bulkhead and mechanical and the shade structures here. At the rear, you can see the lattice work coming up above the wall that'll be partially visible from that areaway, the break in the street wall, and the relocated windows and enlarged masonry openings at the first floor. Just to give you a sense of visibility, there's a mock-up in place. Here is a view from 69th Street directly across from the building. There's no visibility across the primary facade. And then just to take a walk around the block a little bit to the west along East 69th Street, you can see we're going to have a little visibility here. This is the overall view on the left and then the detail views on the right. So you can see the mock-up in the detail view showing this is the lattice work. So only the treillage would be visible there behind the chimney. And this is the rendered view. So it would be just that open work green screen, which will have plantings. Moving a bit closer to the park, across Fifth Avenue, you can see the zoom view of the existing bulk of the proposed bulkhead. And so here is the rendered view in detail. We get a little bit of the treillage, and the elevator overrun is that sort of gray finish right there. And again, this is the overall view. So this is exactly how you would experience it in the streetscape. And of course, it's tucked behind these chimneys. From Madison, when we built the mock-up, we realized there was going to be some visibility of that lattice work and carved it back. So now it's going to have this curved profile. And so we've eliminated the visibility of both these aspects of the screen. And then finally, that view from East 68th Street. So this is from the south between these two buildings that we see on the map, break in the street wall. And so you get this very limited view through secondary elevations and lots of utility that's happening below. This is a rendered view in the overall view. So we have the lattice work is already rendered in, the new window proposal, and the relocation of the windows is ghosted in. And then above that, the new garden structures on the rooftop. And then finally, oops, sorry. There is one little glimpse you get in this exact spot of the outside edge of the relocated windows. Otherwise, that relocation is not visible from the public way. And so here it's just ghosted in and showing you that the sort of left-hand edge of the new windows. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions on this application? All right, let's see if we have any testimony. I'll note that there's no one in the hearing room to speak on this item, so I'll turn it over to Gregory Kalla to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a couple of remote participants with their hands raised. The first I'll be hearing from is Zainab Tehran from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Tehran, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Zainab Tehran here, speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. Friends Preservation Committee supports the proposed work on the primary facade, second areaway, and rear facade, including the addition of a mechanical attic and new terrace garden. We believe, however, the penthouse, bulkhead extension, skylight, and two metal shade structures create an overly congested appearance on the roof. Though we appreciate the temporary aesthetic of the pitch tent-like structures, we would prefer a less crowded rooftop. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Ansonia 1. Ansonia 1, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, hi, I'm Christina Conroy, reading for Ansonia One, for the Victorian Society, New York. The Victorian Society is happy to support the applicant's proposal for 12 East 69th Street. Lowering the front areaway and modifying the existing basement entrance will require removal of only a very small amount of historic masonry. This change, minimally visible from the sidewalk of the depth of the areaway and the restoration of the relatively solid historic fence, will have no effect upon the overall character of this mansion. The existing alleyway between the buildings facing East 68th does allow a limited view of the rear facade of 12 East 69th. Because of this, the rooftop shade structures will be partially visible, but we can support this change given that the structures will be set back from the rear facade and have been designed to look like semi-permanent pavilions. Pavilions such as this, as well as pergolas and awnings, were frequently seen on penthouses on the Upper East Side and are, we believe, in keeping with the character of the district. The other changes to the rear facade, rear yard, and garden wall will not be visible. The changes to the roof bulkhead are unobtrusive. Finally, we are very pleased to see that the applicants are proposing to recreate the original main entrance. The 1945 photo shows metal and glass doors here, and this type of door is often seen in mansions in this district. However, we feel that the entrance visible in the 1915 photo is much more appropriate for this remarkably discreet mansion. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to make any comments?
I think I would just, in terms of the visibility, Friends' comments about the visibility of the shade structures and the development of the rooftop with the bulkhead, I think the Victorian Society testimony kind of hits on it. We have visibility. It's designed to be visible. And we think that it's very consistent with the kind of house this is. And these are really meant to be, felicitous garden structures on the roof. And you're looking through an alleyway loaded with trash cans. And it's kind of nice as you walk by to maybe catch a glimpse of something really beautiful on a rooftop. So I think that is that for me.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions, commissioners? All right, let's begin our discussion then. Commissioner Chen, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we've got 3 areas of work. One is at the front facade, which is to restore the original proportions of the door surround and stoop, but in doing so, that would also involve replacing a metal and glass door with a new solid wood door set slightly back to retain a landing at the top of the stoop that matches the 1915 door. And so we're looking at it to discuss the removal of the door that appeared later in the mid-20th century. It also includes lowering the areaway and modifying a window in that location, which is very deep below grade. At the rooftop, there are some additions to there are shade structures, screen, and elevator bulkhead. There are some incidental views from Fifth Avenue where you see it in the context of chimneys and above trees, and also an incidental view through a limited alleyway on the 68th Street behind it. And at the rear, we are looking at modifying window openings and installing the deck and the screening around the rear yard. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you start this one?
I think this project overall is very thoughtfully and it's very thoughtfully done, and it's well done. In terms of the entry, the decision to do a lot of restoration is welcome. I don't have a problem with getting rid of the existing door and going back to a 6-panel wood door, which was original to the building. And they're doing a lot of good work, as you said, restoring the surround. The door is going to go back to its original height. The transom's going to be restored. They're going to return the treads to their original height, even though they're retaining a step. I'm perfectly fine with the lowering of the floor and the areaway. Likewise, this is again another rear yard situation where there have been significant incursions into the rear yard, and there's a lot of there's a lot of whatever. There's no green, but I'm fine with the deck. I'm fine really with everything in the rear yard, and on the roof, the decking is great. The reconfiguring of the bulkhead works. I really like these metal canopies, and the visibility is minimal, and I think people will barely notice.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Master.
Yes, I agree. I think the applicant did a great job here. The front facade, they changed the door and the door surrounds and the steps to match the original. And I think they did a wonderful job there. In terms of the rear, I think they modified some masonry openings to make it more symmetrical, but I think there's limited visibility. The visibility, I think, for the rear is really from the alleyway, and I think that's definitely acceptable. In terms of the rooftop additions, again, the shade structures and the mechanicals, I think the visibility from public thoroughfares is limited, and the visibility that we do have, I think, kind of blends in with all the other surround that's going on. So I can find this appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
I agree. I think that the rooftop work is reasonable and appropriate for this district, which has lots of one-off houses with all kinds of junk on top. I think that the entry is fine. It's an improvement. The only pause that I had was on the rear windows. It's generally a bad idea to fix old buildings by making them more perfect when they were less perfect. But I think that in this case, where it's a one-off and the rear yard is so occluded and kind of impacted, I think it's okay. Same thing for the courtyard, building full in the court. This is, I think, the poster child for where that would be appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
I agree with my fellow commissioners, appropriate.
All right, Commissioner Chen?
Same here.
Right, Vice Chair Bland?
So much money spent for so little change. But I find nothing to object to.
I can
Commissioner
approve it as
Chapin?
presented.
Okay. All right. So I think we can make the motion. Commissioner Lutfi?
Sure. In the matter of docket 25-0003912 East 69th Street, Upper East Side Historic District, a row house designed by William Schickel and built in 1883 to 1884 and redesigned in the neoclassical style by William Wells Bosworth in 1913. The application is to replace entrance infill, lower the areaway, enlarge a masonry opening, modify the rear facade, rear yard, and garden wall, and construct rooftop additions. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper East Side Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the historic metal entrance infill was installed circa 1944 in a different style than the significant facade alteration of 1913. Therefore, its replacement with new wood infill that closely recalls the 1913 door
pilasters and leaded glass transom, although in a different plane, will help unify the facade and bring it closer to its 1913 appearance. That the lowering of the areaway grading will largely be screened from view by areaway ironwork, and the resulting masonry will be finished with beige finish stucco cladding to blend with the adjacent limestone. That the proposed enlargement of a masonry opening at the basement level will only remove a small amount of plain masonry. That the door and security gate to be replaced at the basement level are simple in design and are not significant features of the building. And that the proposed wood door transom and metal security gate will be in keeping with the doors found at secondary entrances in buildings of this type, style, and age in this historic district. That the proposed work at the rear facade, the rear yard will not alter or eliminate any significant architectural features and will only be visible from public thoroughfares at a distance through a service alley. That the proposed enlargement and shifting of masonry openings at the rear facade will maintain a residential scale and will not detract from the composition of the facade. That the block interior is characterized by rear yard incursions, hardscaping, and larger apartment buildings. Therefore, the raising of the rear yard and installation of a wood screen wall will not diminish a central green space or alter the relationship of the rear yard to the neighboring yards. That the simple form stucco cladding and neutral finishes of the proposed rooftop bulkhead will be in keeping with other rooftop bulkheads within the historic district, and only limited portions of the bulkhead will be visible at oblique angles from 69th Street and Central Park and within the context of other rooftop accretions. That the proposed metal canopies at the roof will be set back from the rear cornice line and will not overwhelm the scale of the building, and that the proposed work will not diminish the special architectural and historic character of the building or of the Upper East Side Historic District.
Thank you. Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you. We'll move to let's try to get you one more. Okay.
Okay, we're going to move to public hearing item number 4, LPC 24-10475. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1387, Lot 1, 910 Fifth Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is an apartment building designed by Fred F. French, built in 1919 and altered by Sylvain Bien in 1958 to 59. The application is to construct additions, enclosures, alter windows, and replace railings.
Okay, the applicant is remote and being promoted to panelist. He should be joining us momentarily. Peter, if you could just unmute yourself, please. You should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Okay, I'm unmuted, I believe.
So we can hear you. If you'd like to begin, please go ahead.
Okay. Do you have a control over the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so good evening. My name is Peter Sabolak. I'm an architect for the project. Okay, so the project is located in Upper East Side Historical District on the junction of two streets, Fifth Avenue and 72nd Street. So original building was designed erected in 1919 in neo-Italian style, but unfortunately in 1958 The facade was stripped of its original beautiful limestone and replaced with the brick veneers. This is existing character of the building. And so we have two views here. One is from the from the Fifth Avenue, showing our activity is on 12th and 14th floor. And the subject of this application is building an addition, actually shifting existing bay windows from the east side to the west side, which is more, okay, this is view from the 72nd Street. Maybe I move it quickly to this slide. So on the left upper corner, you see existing condition showing two bay windows on the west side of the terrace. And our intention is to, our proposal envisions to combine those two bay windows, shifting them towards the east, which will give extra space to the great room, which is proposed in this location. On the right side of the slide, you can see existing rear terrace on the north side of the project, and propose new fencing, new protection. And the reason for it is that existing railing it's not providing security for children. Okay, so this is axonometric view, which shows dotted line existing bay windows, which with a slope roof and new bay window with more modern design, replacing the sloped glass with the solid top. We also proposing replacing existing railing with the glass railing. And here on this side of the slide, showing new railing. So this is existing condition of actually this project. So I want to explain this project envisions combining two floors. We are looking at the 14th floor, and on the 14th floor, we see here bay window on the east side. And this is moving to the new proposal. This is the staircase coming up from the 12th floor. And this is the primary living space. And this plan shows a new bay window. Okay. So this is existing view of current bay windows on the east side of the terrace, and limited in scale, a more contemporary look on the west side, which serves great room. Okay. So this is a comparison of the existing railing on the north side and proposed railing more secured and more safe. This is showing the architectural details. That's how existing bay windows are constructed. This is proposed one which is slightly reduced in projection below existing mechanical equipment. And this is reduced size mechanical equipment with the glass railing. Yeah, this corner, existing railing, the way it's positioned on the top of the parapet wall. And this is slightly set back, new proposed railing. Okay. So, this is existing condition and the finishes of the bay window, the way I constructed today.
we are planning to use the same fenestration details in keeping with the character of the building. This is a comparison projects. Ours is greatly reduced in scale, but shows the possibility of using glass railing and the bay windows additions on the top. I skip this one. Okay, this slide shows the mock-up which we built on the on the 14th floor, and this little thing here on the top shows the bay window, and here's the railing. That's the view from the Fifth Avenue. We originally proposed 2 bay windows, but we removed one and we maintain only one on the west side. So this area here, it's no longer applicable. So this is the mock-up showing the images of the bay window. That's from the view towards east. That's the view towards west, and the railing on the back. So that's it for presentation.
Right. Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Goldblum.
Yeah, in the picture on the left, how deep does the bay window immediately above your proposed bay window extend from the facade?
Are we talking about this?
Yeah, that one, right. How far does that stick out? How far does yours stick out?
I would only guess that this sticks out around 30 inches, and our bay window sticks out 3 feet 8 inches. So
Thanks.
I think we have a projection of additional 12 inches there. I think it's well illustrated under our rendering. It's well, I don't know, it's maybe confusing because we have a balcony here and not a bay window.
Okay. And were any of the, this might be for staff, were any of the little greenhouse things there that are existing, were any of them approved under landmarks, or were they any of them original to the building as far as we know?
Yeah, I think some of those, the one that we're looking at was originally built without permits, but then came back subsequently and was either legalized or approved to be modified to be what it is now at a hearing. So it's a legal condition, the projecting one above.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Note that there's no one in the room to speak on this item, so I'll turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. If you would like to speak on this item, yes. So we have one hand raised, that being Zainab Tehran from the Upper Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Tehran, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hello again, Commissioners. Zainab Tehran here speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. While Friends Preservation Committee does not oppose to the proposed modifications to the south terrace of this apartment unit, we would like to express our preference for transparent glass used in this new sunroom addition, rather than the darker shade depicted in the 3D renderings. Additionally, we believe that a wood railing for the north terrace is incongruous with the building architectural style. A glass railing or a metal and glass combination would better maintain the aesthetic consistency of the proposed terrace alteration. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. There is one other hand raised, that being Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And once you're a panelist, please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC supports the majority of this proposal, but finds the proposed glass railing on the south terrace inappropriate. We ask that the applicant use a less reflective material. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. There are no further hands raised in the attendees list, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to ask the applicant if you would like to respond to any of the comments we've heard.
Yes, so the shading of the glass, it's only for the rendering purposes. It's actually clear, so it's not darkened in any way. I'm leaving with the commissioner to make a decision on the railing. If this is not approved, we are happy to work with the opposing parties and propose alternative.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, if there are no final questions, we'll move to our discussion. Okay, Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Yes, sorry.
All in favor, say
Motion.
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we have on this building that's on the corner of Fifth Avenue and East 72nd Street, we have proposals on the south for the south elevation, which is the 72nd Street elevation, and at the north end of the building, which is facing into the interior of the block. On the south elevation, the East 72nd Street elevation, the proposal is to remove one greenhouse addition at the setback terrace and install another one to the east beneath the balcony, and to modify openings behind the wall where the existing greenhouse addition is located to create those single pane windows. And then at the East 72nd Street side, the proposal includes replacing the metal pipe rail railing with a clear glass railing. And at the north elevation and terrace, proposal includes a wood railing. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Master, would you start this one?
Sure. I think that in terms of the changes to the windows, I think that that is appropriate. The reason is that I think it's going to be very hard to see from the streetscape. So I think that those changes are appropriate. The only concern I have is with the railing. If the railing is not consistent with the existing railing, then I believe that the changes may stick out. So I wonder if the applicant would consider keeping the existing railing, especially where it's physically visible from the street.
Okay.
Other than that, it's appropriate.
All right, Commissioner Goldblum.
Thanks. Normally we don't go for glass railings because they get reflective and dirty and stuff. But I think at this height, and if we kept the original metal one in front of it, it'd be okay.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I think the A is fine as is, and I agree with Commissioner Master and Goldblum about the railing.
Okay. Commissioner Chen.
Same here.
Vice Chair Bland.
For me.
Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I find this acceptable as presented, except for the railing, which I think should continue to be as it is because of the appearance of it's one of the few defining elements that you might perceive.
Okay. And Commissioner Lutfi. All right, so I think the majority of us would support the addition of the bay as is and the window openings, but with the stipulation that the railing remain consistent. Commissioner Master, would you make that motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC 24 10475 910 Fifth Avenue, Upper East Side Historic District, an apartment building designed by Fred F. French and built in 1919 and altered by Sylvain Bien in 1958-59. Application is to construct additions, alter windows, and replace railings. I note that the building is not one for which the Upper East Side Historic District was designated, and that it is identified as having no style in the Upper East Side Historic District designation report. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the existing building is not one for which historic district was designated. Therefore, the removal of non-original enclosures and portions of the plain brick facade at the setback 14th floor will not eliminate any significant architectural features of the building. That the setback location and simple massing of the proposed metal and glass enclosure will help it remain a discrete presence on the building. That only the uppermost portion of the proposed enclosure will be minimally visible from long views along Fifth Avenue from Central Park and points east along East 72nd Street, and that the material and finish of the enclosure will harmonize with existing materials and finishes found on this facade, thereby helping it recede from view. And that the new openings at the setback terrace facade where the existing enclosures are being removed will not be visible from public thoroughfares and will harmonize with the existing fenestration pattern in terms of size, material, and finish. And I recommend that the existing railings be retained at both the front and rear terraces with a screening, either glass or wood screening installed inside of the railings. Please work with staff on the details.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion? Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, so that's approved with that modification, and that concludes the morning session. We are about 35 minutes behind schedule, so it is 1:05 now. We will resume at 1:35, and we'll ask everyone to exit the Zoom voluntarily at this time so that should you wish to return, you don't experience technical difficulties that might arise if we have to remove you. And we'll see everybody at 1:35. Thank you.